Chapter 21. Tamara. "Hi, Mare," Dallas said. The moment he entered the classroom, warmth suffused my soul. I stood and rushed into his embrace. He held me close, his head resting on top of mine. Then he pulled away and brushed a kiss to my forehead. "I'm so glad to see you," I admitted, my lips caressing his cheek. Dallas smirked, pleased by my declaration. "Mrs. B, it's nice to see you," Dallas said, not even bothering to acknowledge Renee. I pulled away from Dallas and walked over to the pile of gifts. "Let's just get this into the car," I insisted. "We really had a family emergency, Tamara. Thomas will be happy to see you," my mother pleaded in a tone that grated on my nerves. "Right, so when I get shot, that's no big deal. But when your precious Thomas cuts his finger on a knife, the world has to end?" I shouted, anger pulsing in my heart. "Angela took time out of her day to plan something for me, and you allowed Renee to ruin it. Are you going to ruin my wedding too?" The question made my mother stiffen. "What the hell, Tamara? There might not be a wedding. Why did you say that?" That voice of doubt was becoming softer. I had to acknowledge that perhaps Dallas and I did have something. "Young lady, you do not talk to me like this. You have always been jealous of your sister. Dallas and I are eloping. You're not invited to the wedding. I can't risk you ruining it for me," I blurted out. And oddly enough, a sense of peace came over me in that moment. Dallas had been my constant the entire time. He had been the one to comfort me, support me, and believe in me. I couldn't imagine a life without him, and his kisses made me melt from the inside out. No, I wasn't ready to get married in October like Mom planned. But I could get used to the idea of being Mrs. Tamara Washington. Dallas let out a laugh. "Sure, Tamara. Let's do it first thing tomorrow," Dallas teased. "Tamara, if you do that to me, I will never forgive you," Mom threatened. "It's either I elope or Renee isn't invited to the wedding," I challenged. Renee got to her feet, her face contorted in anger. "You don't have to uninvite me. I don't want to come. Let's go, Mom. Dad needs us." Renee huffed on her way out the door. "Dear, you should apologize to your sister. What you said was disrespectful," Mom said. My hell no expression must have told her that I wasn't going to follow her suggestion. Mom groaned and followed Renee like the money-hungry sheep she was. Angela suddenly applauded as if I had done something spectacular. When Jason joined in, I eyed Dallas, who shrugged. "It's nice to see you standing up to your mother," he confessed. "Katie is not going to be included in anything else I plan," Angela declared, as she hefted one of the overstuffed gift bags. I attempted to grab something, but Jason shooed me away. "It's your day, Tamara. Allow us to help," he insisted. My classmates helped Dallas pack his SUV with the gifts. When it was all set and done, I peered at my classmates. "Thanks, guys. I'll never forget what you did for me," I told my friends. "No problem, girl," Angela said, pulling me into a hug. "Be happy, girl. Dallas is a good man," she whispered. I nodded, and after she released me, I gave Jason our customary high five. Then I hopped into the passenger seat of the SUV, and Dallas took me back to his house. Livy, Matt, and Cindy were waiting for us on the couch. Livy was leaning into Matt, her eyes only focused on him. Judging by the sparkle in his eye, he seemed to enjoy the sitting arrangement. Well, I called it. Cindy did have an expiration date. What a jerk. I was still kind of annoyed that he tried to pressure Dallas into getting a lap dance, but I wasn't going to call him on it. He was who he was, and my words wouldn't change that. You guys took forever, Cindy complained as Dallas deposited an armful of gifts on the floor by the coffee table. Despite his protests, I carried in 2 gift bags and dumped them with the others. Your classmates got you gifts? Livy asked, excitement lighting her eyes. Why do you look unhappy? Renee managed to ruin things, I responded. How? Livy wondered. I dove into the sordid details, being sure to leave nothing out. When it was over, even Cindy looked appropriately disgusted. Who ends a party over a guy cutting his finger? He probably had 2 stitches at best, Cindy said. That's an emergency? Livy asked. Apparently, I grumbled as I plopped down on one of the recliners. Dallas left the room for a minute and returned with a tall glass of lemonade. You should probably make her a Long Island iced tea, Livy suggested. Then we should all take my private jet to Vegas. Let's not. My grandmother would kill me if I got married without her, I said after accepting the drink from Dallas. We could invite her, Dallas teased. He sat on the floor in front of my legs. I began scratching his scalp, just how he liked it. Or you could just ignore your sister, Matt chimed in. Who cares what she does? As long as you have Dallas, it shouldn't matter. That advice was solid, but when your sister was acting petty, it was difficult to take the high road. Livy stood and clapped her hands. Forget about Renee for now. Let's see what your lovely classmates bought you. And yes, Tamara, I will be in charge of writing your thank you notes. All you have to do is provide me with a list of addresses. Or I could just send virtual ones, I suggested, which made Livy gasp dramatically. You're going to reward the thoughtfulness of your classmates by sending them virtual thank you cards? What has this world come to? Livy complained. I don't have everyone's address, I pointed out. Enough of that mess. You need to open your gifts before dinner comes, Livy insisted. Guilt filled me at the reminder that people spent their hard-earned money on me to celebrate a wedding I wasn't positive would happen. I desperately needed to talk to someone about my doubts and fears. Normally, Dallas would be the person that I vented to. However, I was worried that I'd hurt him if he knew what was going through my head. I'll take pictures, Cindy offered. Livy cheered and gestured to Dallas. Stand beside your woman. I want to get a good shot of you two, Livy ordered. Dallas stood and leaned against the recliner, his hand resting on my lower back. I felt the heat of his firm hand through my clothes. Smile, Cindy ordered, her phone poised to take the shot. I glanced up at Dallas, who was sporting a joyous expression. Guilt and pleasure mingled in my heart. This man was excited that he was marrying me. I forced myself to grin, the smile probably coming off as disingenuous. But I couldn't help it. I was no actress. Cindy snapped a few pictures, then Livy presented us with the first gift. Open it, Dallas encouraged. I sighed and reached for the gift bag. Read out who it's from, Livy directed before pulling out her own phone. This gift is from Jason, I reluctantly said, unearthing a couple of candles, a $50 gift card to Target, and a picture frame. It was a thoughtful gift, something simple since the man only had a day to shop. The next gift I received was a book on marriage advice, which was practical, I supposed. The gift from Angela was a beautiful comforter that was meant for a king-sized bed. By the time Livy handed me another beautifully wrapped gift, my mood had improved. This one is from Katie, I read, confused. Hadn't Katie decided not to attend the last day of classes? When I thought about our interaction outside the classroom, I couldn't help but assume she was upset about Dallas's proposal. I opened the gift and wasn't surprised to discover that she gave me a scarf and Dallas a black tie. I handed Dallas his tie and then held up the scarf. My intent was to show it off since Livy loved seeing the gifts, but then a piece of paper fell into my lap. Maybe Katie wrote me a note, I thought to myself. I tossed the scarf at Livy and picked up the paper. The message written sent icy fear through me. Dear Tamara, it's obvious that you're jealous of your sister. She is beautiful, talented, and has a personality that lights up a room. But I didn't think that you would ever hurt her in this way. How dare you marry the man that Renee is deeply in love with? What kind of person disregards their sister's feelings as if they don't matter? You will pay for this. I'll make sure of this. Her fans will make sure of this. Renee's most loyal admirer, Donovan. For a moment, I simply stared at the typed words, stunned. But then questions began bombarding my brain. How had Donovan snuck the letter into Katie's package? How had he known about Renee's interest in Dallas? How had he known about the party? Had he been paroled yet? Was Livy off on the dates? Why did he type the letter? Wait, I knew the answer to that one. If he typed the letter, there would be no way for the police to link it to him. But how had he gotten a hold of Katie's package? Was she in on it? Mare? Dallas cautiously asked. What's wrong? I handed Dallas the letter as the first tear began falling down my face. Livy handed me a tissue. Was the note rude? Cindy asked. Let me see it, Dallas, Livy demanded. Moments later, Livy let out a string of curses. We need to talk to Katie to see if her package was ever left unattended. Or we can call the police, Dallas suggested. Over a note? How are we even going to prove that Donovan wrote it? For all we know, Katie could have typed up the note, Livy argued. I say we confront Katie. Or we can just forget about it, I said through a sob. I was half tempted to break things off with Dallas to avoid the drama. That would only hurt him, and I couldn't afford to do that. Dallas was the only person that understood me. He was my rock, my heart. And I did believe that he was my soulmate in a platonic kind of way. Maybe we could be happy together. But how is that going to happen with Donovan Chambers hiding in the shadows, waiting for the opportunity to disturb my life? I think what I really wanted to know was one thing. Was marrying Dallas really worth the trouble? Oh, please, Renee Starr-Cabot isn't even hot anymore. I doubt that Donovan really wrote this. I bet that Katie wanted to mess up Tamara's day, Cindy said. While I was in my own head, Livy must have passed the letter around. I have to agree with Cindy, Matt chimed in. I think that we should talk to Katie, Livy repeated. It's the only way that we'll get answers. Tamara, what do you want to do? Dallas gently asked me. I want to forget about it, I admitted. I want to go home. Grandma Mabel would know what I should do. We should table the discussion, Dallas said, his gaze holding worry. Tamara, I can take you home. We'll open the rest of the gifts later, Livy said. I got to my feet and Dallas wrapped me in a hug. I clung to him, worried that I would have to let him go to be rid of Donovan. Chapter 22. Renee. A day after the pathetic attempt of a wedding shower, I was fuming. It was clear that Dallas was desperate enough to actually marry Tamara. He wasn't in love with her. He felt sorry for her. As thoughts ran through my head, I eyed the clothes hanging up in the closet of my suite at the Westin Hotel. The charity crap was almost over, thank goodness. The homeless gave me a headache. I hated when I wasn't able to solve a problem. I could barely guarantee another movie, let alone feed and house the desperate. Come on, Renee. How are you going to spin it? Stella Clark was trying her hand at doing virtual interviews. It was something about adding extra juicy content to her website. I didn't care. The only objective of this interview was to make it go viral. "Why don't you call your stylist?" Mom asked. I startled, having no idea that she was behind me. I turned to face her and was hardly surprised that she was in a pantsuit holding a glass of red wine. "This is supposed to be a dry environment," I reminded her. Mom rolled her eyes. "I doubt that people will care about me having a glass of wine. Your father is resting. I can't believe that he tried cooking. Whoever uses the kitchen in suites?" Mom wondered. Her attitude wasn't doing much to help me come up with a plan. "I want to try to make this interview go viral," I confessed. "You aren't pregnant, so we can't go that route. You can try talking about Dallas. Maybe you should clear up the mess between him and Tony Williams." At first, I was taken aback, surprised that Mom would do anything to help Dallas. But then she continued speaking. "You should explain that Dallas was your date for the charity event. You should talk about how you were off and on and you only dated little Seven to make him jealous. That would be quite the scandal." I pictured my boring sister watching the interview and felt guilty. Were Tamara and I close? Hell no, but that didn't mean that I wanted my fans harassing her. "I don't think I want to do all of that," I said. Mom shook her head. "That's the only way you'll get everyone talking about you. You need better roles. Hell, I'd be happy if you scored a reality show deal." The thought of pretending to be someone 24/7 gave me a migraine. No way in hell was I going to bother with that sort of thing. The Academy Awards would be impossible to reach if I did reality TV. "I don't want a reality TV deal. I just want a role on the big screen." Mom patted my cheek. "Then do as I say. Tamara might as well make herself useful." An hour later, I was dressed like I was going to a funeral. I wore a wig that gave me shoulder-length, full, straight black hair. Since the camera wouldn't capture my feet, I opted to remain barefoot. I plopped down at the head of the table and logged into the video conferencing site that Stella preferred. "Renae, what a look!" Stella Clark said, bewilderment on her face. I could have said the same to her. Stella Clark was a tall, buxom brunette who wore a thick wig with an enviable side part. A short red dress clung to her body so tightly, I swore that the fabric was on the verge of cracking her ribs. "You look great," I lied. She sat up straight, her plump lips stretching into a wide grin. "Is anything off limits?" "No." "Then I'm going to start recording now," Stella said. I knew the moment she hit record because her entire face seemed to light up. "Hi, guys. Thanks for subscribing to my mailing list. I am here to deliver extra content just for you, my beautiful subscribers. Today, I'm interviewing an actress, singer, model, and gun violence advocate. Her latest project, a TV movie titled Bad Friends, will premiere on all streaming sites tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Renee Starr Cabot." "Thanks so much for having me," I said in a subdued voice. "Renee, what's up with the outfit? It's different from what you usually wear," Stella commented. I'm mourning the loss of my relationship, so I figured that I should dress appropriately," I replied, anguish filling my eyes. Stella's mouth fell open. She was used to guests who were fake or dodgy. I could tell that she hadn't expected me to confirm my breakup with little Seven off the bat. If only Stella knew the crap that was coming next. "So you and little Seven are no longer together?" I shot the interviewer an uncertain look, not wanting to make things too easy. "Oh, come on, girl. You can't just make a statement like that and leave us hanging," Stella pointed out. "Little Seven and I are just friends. The media sort of blew that out of proportion," I lied. Stella gasped, surprised that I'd actually admit something like that. "What about your Instagram pics?" Stella demanded. I put those up to distract the media. I was dating this guy that I've known since childhood. He has no interest in dealing with the paparazzi, which is understandable. I thought nothing of it. But then, he proposed to my sister instead of me. There. I didn't say his name outright, but I was positive that my observant fans would judge it up. Wait, you mean the sister of yours that looks like she has a stick up her butt? When I shot Stella a disapproving look, Stella held up her hands. What? You can't fault me for saying that. That's what everyone's thinking. Yes, it's just difficult for me because I've always loved my sister and hungered for a close relationship. I even offered to buy her a wedding dress, but she responded by telling me that I'm not even welcomed to the wedding. That's why I'm really connected to Julia, the character I play in Bad Friends. She is a person who does anything to try to please her less successful friends. And all her friends do to her is drag her down, I rambled. After all, I had to plug my latest film wherever I could. Was playing Julia therapeutic for you? Most definitely. I could relate to her in so many ways. And being in the movie caused me to reevaluate some of the relationships in my life. Since this wasn't supposed to be a long interview, Stella wrapped it up. She offered me a smile and a goodbye before the screen went black. A soft knock on the door caused my eyes to fly open. I was tucked into the king-size bed while the 10 o'clock news softly played on the flat-screen TV. I must have fallen asleep during the movie I put on. I yawned and yelled, "Come in!" Dad entered the room and quickly shut the door. Yep, I was about to be dragged into the middle of one of my parents' arguments again. Maybe I should send them to a marriage counselor. Dad, who was dressed in sleep shorts and a t-shirt, plopped down beside me on the bed. "Ren, you know I love you, right?" my father asked. Nerves danced in my stomach. Oh no, he was going to tell me that he wanted to divorce my mother. I pleaded with him the first time he tried to file. Would it work for a second time? "Dad, I'm thinking about sending you and Mom on a second honeymoon," I blurted out, hoping to keep his conversation positive. "You've been in Weston for nearly a week, and you haven't invited Tamara out for dinner." The exhaustion in his eyes caused guilt to flicker in my heart. Dad worried about my relationship with Tamara. Who knew why? "Dad, you know how things are between us." My weak response caused him to rub his eyes. "Why did you do that to her, Renee?" Do what? The best plan was to play dumb. "Why did you disrupt the party that her class threw her?" Oh, please. Plastic glasses filled with fizzy grape juice and a cake doesn't make it a party, I snorted. "Renee, you know what you did. I just want to know why." His insistence was annoying. What in the hell did this guy want from me? I was trying to ruin your sister's happiness. Why? What pushed you to lie to Stella Clark? Most of the Stella Clark thing was Mom's idea. Why don't you ask her? I snapped, unwilling to take the blame for that one. Why are you questioning me like this? I'm just trying to understand why you are trying to ruin your sister's reputation. She's innocent and all that, and why do you care about Tamara? It isn't like she's your daughter. I am, I shouted. How dare my father be disloyal to me? Guilt momentarily filled his brown eyes, and he took a deep breath. I'm not your biological father. Your mother lied to me. Rodney Freeman is your biological father. He doesn't know about me. Hell, I didn't even know until your mother confessed her secrets during one of her drunken nights. She cheated on me with Rodney, and I got to my feet and felt like the world had just twisted on its side. I was dizzy, confused, and unable to move. No, this wasn't true. I was Renee Starr Cabot, not Renee Starr Freeman. Thomas was my father, the one that supported me in everything I did. Mom wouldn't take my birth father away from me. That was impossible. No, I softly said. Sorry, honey, he said. I'll give you some time to digest it. I'm here to talk if you need me. As soon as Dad left my room, I started weeping.
Chapter 23. Dallas. Disappointment dragged me down as I walked up the driveway to Mare's house. I used my key to enter the house since Mabel's car wasn't in the driveway. I craved her touch, and part of me wanted to make sure that Donovan hadn't left any surprise notes for Mare, although I suspected that it most likely wasn't him. From how Mare told it, Katie seemed bitter about our engagement. The house was dark, but I knew it well. I made my way up the stairs and knocked on Mare's bedroom door. "Come in, Dallas," she called. Of course she knew it was me. I opened the door and discovered Mare lying in bed under a blue comforter, a documentary playing on her TV. I stripped down to my boxers and slid into bed beside her. Mare immediately rested her head on my chest. "What's wrong?" I didn't want to talk about myself, since the news would only worry her. "We haven't spoken since last night." "I had a lot to think about. It's not every day that I find a note from Donovan," she said. "Are you sure that we shouldn't call the police?" "I know the game. I'll go to the police with this vague note and they'll argue that Donovan is in prison. He couldn't possibly have written it. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if they accused me of writing it." "Maybe Katie did it to be hurtful," I suggested. "Maybe. That means that we'll have to see," Mare replied. I wasn't going to take chances with Mare's safety. If Donovan so much as sniffed in her direction, I would hire a bodyguard to protect her. "We'll do it your way for now," I decided to tell my fiancé. "Maybe we should avoid posting things about our engagement," Mare suddenly suggested. "I'll have a talk with Cindy." "Speaking of Cindy, why is she still around?" Mare asked, curious. I couldn't blame her for the question. Matt had an MO when it came to how he handled women. During the end of his relationships, he tended to leave his lady at home whenever he visited me. Matt expressed interest in moving in with Cindy. I suspected that he was getting tired of playing the game. "I think that Cindy is here to stay." I chuckled when Tamara let out a disappointed groan. "Really? Out of everyone, he wants to be with Cindy?" Her disbelief made me chuckle. "She's not as bad as you think." The knowledge that Livy and Matt were sleeping together moved me to defend her. "Did you ever try to have a conversation with her?" "I've had a conversation with her. It consisted of her asking me to add her on Instagram and me politely refusing," Mare complained. "And remember, she did bring up Donovan the other night. She's a gossip." "You always see the best in people," Mare playfully shot back. "That's why you love me." Mare pressed a soft kiss to my chest. "What's bothering you, Dallas?" Mare's persistence was annoying at times. I let out a sigh. Byron and I developed a video game. "We can't find investors for our video game," I confessed. Mare gently massaged my temples, which caused some of the aggravation to roll off of me. "Have you been online lately?" "No, your proposal distracted me," she admitted. "Great, I'd have to catch her up." Let's see. According to some gossip blogger, I hit on Christina Williams during the charity event I went to last year. Her husband thinks that I'm a no-good cheater who doesn't deserve you, I said. I let it all out, telling Mare about the meetings that led to nothing. She continued to comfort me with her touch. "Have you thought about talking it out with Tony Williams?" Tamara suggested. "Oh, hell no. That nasty prick found a way to blackball me." "You mean kiss his ass so I can get my games in store?" "You have two choices, Dallas. You could build a video game empire or make nice with narcissistic celebrities," Mare said. "Will it bother you if I work on my video game empire?" I wondered, knowing that a business venture was time-consuming. Mare rubbed my shoulder. Dallas, all I want is for you to be happy. Will building a business keep you busy? Sure. But we'll make time for each other, she said. Speaking of time together, I'd love to take you on a date tomorrow, I said. And I'd love to go, Mare replied. For a while, we lay there, enjoying the companionable silence. I should have known that Mare was simply working up the nerve to ask me something. How long have you had feelings for me? Tamara asked, curious. I don't know, I admitted. The realization that I wanted to be with you happened gradually. At first, I noticed that you were really attractive. I wanted to kiss your plump lips and pull you close. Then I started missing your smile whenever we spent time away from each other. Suddenly, I was anticipating the day I could see you again. Then the desire to hang with you alone came. So I started creating traditions, hoping that one of those nights I would be able to kiss you. But I was worried about freaking you out. I know that you hate change and wouldn't be open to trying us out. So I talked to Matt about it. He joked that we were already dating, so go figure. That gave me the idea to propose to you. Matt didn't think that you would say yes. Byron thought that I should try asking you out. It was Livy who told me to go for it. Livy was the one that helped me pick out your ring. I even asked your father for your hand. What did he say? Mare asked. She lifted her face from my chest and made eye contact with me. He told me to go for it, I replied. I'm glad you did, Mare said, before her lips found mine. The kiss was brief, too quick for my liking, but it was pleasant, having the weight of her back on my chest again. Not so fast, sweetheart. How did you know that you were in love with me? Mare sighed. I am a fool, Dallas, Mare suddenly said. Do you remember when you dated Via? The girl that screwed another guy in a hotel room I paid for? I will never forget that. Dallas, focus. I mean before that. You would be nice to her and I'd feel jealous. You'd talk about being in bed with her and I'd be upset. But I thought it was because I didn't have a romantic partner of my own. Then, while I was in college, I always craved your company. I again thought that it was because we were friend soulmates. Friend soulmates? I asked, surprised. Yep. I even told one of my clients that I had a friend that was my soulmate. I guess it wasn't until finding you in that strip club that I realized my feelings for you. So, it took the strip club for Mare to realize that she had deep feelings for me? Well, I suppose that I had Matt to thank. You do realize that I thought I said yes to your proposal by accident. I chuckled. I could tell that you were unsure about things. I figured you would either talk to me or figure things out, I said. I'm glad you had faith in us, Dallas, Mare said before letting out a yawn. Want to sleep here tonight? Sure, I replied. I settled into bed and closed my eyes. It wasn't long until I fell asleep. Dallas, it's time to wake up, Mare shouted. I slowly opened my eyes and let out a wide yawn. Mare was wearing a pair of black dress pants and a blue blouse. Her hair was in a bun and her lips were glossed. Need a ride? I asked. Mare shook her head. I'll just grab an Uber, she insisted. Byron called me. He wanted me to remind you that you have a meeting at 8:30. Crap. That was code for the surprise that I was planning for Mare. At least my blabbermouth brother didn't blow my spot. I'll drive you, I insisted. I seriously need to get my car out of the garage. I don't like depending on you for rides, Mare commented. Little did she know the hunk of trash she called a car was scrap metal. You'll figure out your ride soon, I said as I got out of bed. My clothes were on Tamara's dresser in a neat, folded pile. The woman couldn't help herself. After I changed and put on my shoes, Tamara handed me the toiletry bag that she kept for me, just in case. I took it and headed into the bathroom. These are the best muffins, Mare gushed as we pulled away from the coffee shop by the Weston Medical Health Center. I prefer donuts every time. The 3 donuts I ordered for breakfast were in the paper bag in the back seat. Donuts were treats that needed to be savored. Mare was scheduled for a session first thing, so was forced to rush through her breakfast. She paired her muffin with a black coffee. I preferred cappuccinos. How you can eat a double chocolate donut with chocolate chips amazes me every time, Mare teased. I still don't understand why you like corn muffins. Because they're sweet enough. Before I forget, when were you going to tell me about Matt and Livy? Great. Mare hated surprises and would be pissed that I failed to give her the heads up. You already think so badly of Matt. I just didn't want you to dislike him more, I admitted. Mare finished her muffin and shoved her wrapper into a paper bag. She snatched up her coffee and began sipping it. It gave me quite a shock when I saw Matt drive by with Livy in the passenger seat. You mean you were surprised by it, I guessed. I'm not as surprised as you think. I saw how close they were sitting to each other the other night, Mare said. I don't think either of them are serious about it, so I don't think it would change much. Mare nodded. No more secrets, Dallas, she pleaded. In all fairness, Matt and Livy were more of an embarrassment than a secret. No more secrets, I agreed. I pulled up in front of the center and Mare pressed a soft kiss to my lips before snatching her coffee and leaving the car. This could be seen as controlling, Byron said as soon as I hopped into his black SUV. Tamara's present was waiting for her in the driveway. Buying my woman a gift? I asked. Byron pulled away from the 2-story house. No, putting the ride that she paid for in a junkyard. Maybe, but I have a feeling that Mare is going to need a reliable car. I don't know, man. Something just feels off. I know. Livy convinced me to meet her at this coffee shop yesterday. She wanted to plan something for you and Mare, but that wasn't the strange part. Livy actually came on to me. Byron's rushed words pissed me off. Matt wasn't good enough for Livy? She needed to play head games with Byron as well? How did she come on to you? I tried to stay calm, hoping that this was a misunderstanding. She asked me if I was a rough or gentle lover, Byron replied. Her name was Nevaeh, you know, heaven spelled backward. She was hot, someone that would normally not go for me. She gave me her number and told me to call her. You think she's a gold digger? I asked. Not sure. I just find it suspicious that someone like me would catch the interest of someone like her. Call her, meet her for coffee, ignore Livy, I advised. I don't want Matt's sloppy seconds. No need to warn me about Livy. I needed to talk to Matt about Livy. It was obvious that she got what she wanted and was moving on. But who would have thought that Livy would have her eye on Byron, who was the monogamous type? I shook my head, thinking that my friends were more trouble than they were worth. Byron, we need to map something out. What, your wedding? I'm no good with that kind of stuff, Byron warned. No, man, our expansion. We need to develop a series of video games, our own gaming consoles, the works. Byron shot me a grin.
Chapter 24. Tamara. By Friday, the note that Donovan allegedly smuggled into the gift bag was a distant memory. There were some nasty comments finding their way in my DMs, something that I accepted. It came with the territory of being the hated sibling of a famous teen idol. It was sticks and stones and all that. Besides, I had more important things to worry about. I needed to make a breakthrough with Virginia and Edward. I had the sense that my future employment was depending on it. That's why I did breathing exercises before meeting the couple in the waiting room. Please, follow me, I told the unhappy couple, which sat on opposite sides of the room. Edward was dressed in his suit, while Virginia chose to wear sweatpants and a skin-tight black t-shirt. Her hair was now dyed hot pink. I had a feeling that there was a story behind the drastic change. "Good afternoon, Virginia. How are you? Thanks for coming. I'm grateful that you made time for me," Virginia said, mimicking my voice. I wanted to slap the annoying woman across the face, which was surprising. Usually, I'd find that comment only slightly annoying. It must have been the stress of my new relationship that was getting to me. I seriously needed to calm down before I ruined my chance at employment. "Good afternoon, Virginia," I said, shooting her a friendly smile. She rolled her eyes and flipped her hair. "Let's just get this over with. I want Chinese food." I nodded, then led the couple out of the waiting room and onto the elevator. "I think that Edward should buy me a new TV," Virginia said as soon as we sat in our seats. I eyed Edward, who was playing with the tip of his black tie, something he always did when he was annoyed. "I'd like to start out this session by asking you both a few questions," I said, trying to take control of the conversation. "I thought that the job of a therapist is for you to listen to me," Virginia complained. "Oh, shut up about the TV, Virginia. Let the woman ask her questions." Virginia flipped Edward off, but stayed quiet. "Did the two of you go on your date?" I inquired as I pulled up the session notes on my computer. "Yes, I got all dressed up and Edward took me to a cheap Chinese restaurant," Virginia complained. "You said that you wanted to go there," Edward argued. "Yeah, so that you could surprise me with something better. It's common sense. Why would I feel comfortable asking you for something expensive?" Virginia asked, clearly flabbergasted. "Virginia, why do you feel uncomfortable asking Edward to take you to an expensive restaurant?" I inquired. "Because he'll say no," Virginia replied. "The last time I asked him for something like that, he made fun of me in front of my parents." "This woman wanted me to take her to some $350 a plate restaurant on the rooftop of some fancy hotel. Then when I pointed out that I couldn't afford for us both to eat, she told me that I could keep her company as she ate." "It was my birthday," Virginia shouted. "It wasn't about you." I was convinced that Virginia only cared about herself. I tried to figure out how to save this session. "Nothing is ever about me," Edward yelled back. "I can't even get you to talk to me. All you want to do is play hide the sausage whenever I try to talk to you." "That's because all you talk about is sports, the teachers at your school, and how useless Tamara is. I mean, you think that Tamara can turn me into the perfect wife, but you can't. Why can't you accept me for who I am?" "Because I'm not happy," Edward shouted. Shock hit me at what Virginia had just said. Edward thought that these sessions were pointless. I had to admit that it was going to take an act of God to save this marriage. Virginia was right about something. Edward did want her to be something that she could never be. "You're not happy. Why? You have the job you want, a hot wife that's good in bed, and kids. I didn't even want kids, but I popped 2 of them out for you. And let me just point out that my figure never recovered. I used to have the perfect body. When I was in my prime, I wanted to be an exotic dancer, but I gave that dream up for you. I wanted to live in Las Vegas, but you chose to live here, and when I'm finally happy, you ruin it with your demands." Virginia shot back. I rubbed my temples before taking control of this mess. "Okay. Now that we established that you both are unhappy, what would make you happy? Virginia, why don't you name one thing that you wish could change?" "I wish that Edward would stop complaining. I'm happy with being a housewife," Virginia said at a reasonable volume. Good. The woman was no longer yelling. "Edward, what about you?" I inquired.
"I want Virginia to shower at least 5 times a week,"
Edward said. "Virginia, how do you feel about Edward's wish for you to take a shower 5 times a week?" I asked. "He doesn't understand that sometimes I'm tired," Virginia whined. "It takes everything for me to get out of bed. Then once I get out of bed, I'm so hungry that I'm looking for food. Then I get distracted by the TV, my games, and I don't know. I guess I can try." "What if you set a reminder on your phone?" I asked. Virginia looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "I can do that," Virginia agreed. "Edward, how do you feel about Virginia's wish for you to stop complaining?" I inquired. Edward tugged harder at his tie.
"She doesn't want to listen to me, Tamara. No sense in beating up a dead horse. If I even begin to tell a story, she starts groaning,"
Edward said. "Not true," Virginia said. But I could tell that she was actually giving Edward's words some thoughts.
"How about this?"
Edward began.
"If you actually shower 5 days this week, I'll stop complaining to you about sports."
"If I shower 4 times a week, I'll listen to 15 minutes of sports talk," Virginia countered. And the rest of the session went much the same, with the toxic couple shooting toxic demands at one another. By the end, I really couldn't say if I had accomplished anything. And that just made me feel sad. I stepped out into the sunny afternoon, relieved that I was finished seeing clients. For the first time, I wondered if being a counselor suited me. If I loved a job, wouldn't I feel a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day? I shook off the negative thoughts and searched for my friends. Livy was leaning against Dallas's SUV, her phone pressed to her ear. As soon as her eyes landed on me, she quickly hung up the phone. Dallas got out of the SUV and hurried over to me, a concerned expression on his face. "Mare, what's wrong?" Dallas asked, pulling me into a hug. I couldn't return it since I was holding my computer bag, but I still pressed my face against his t-shirt. His presence made me relax, the failure that clung to my soul slowly receding. "It's good to see you," I said. I seriously need to get my car out of the shop. Dallas brushed his lips against the top of my head before pulling away. "It's sitting in your driveway," he casually said. "What is sitting in my driveway?" I had a feeling that his response was going to agitate me. "Your car," Dallas replied before holding out his hand. "Let's go. We have reservations at 8 o'clock. I hope that's plenty of time for you to get ready." "Dallas, Wade, Washington, what kind of car is parked in my driveway?" He hated my car and had often urged me to allow him to buy another one for me. Dallas sighed. "Don't fight me on this, Tamara. You need something dependable. The other night I had a nightmare that your car broke down and Donovan cornered you," Dallas admitted. Dallas's worries were valid, but I didn't like that he made an important decision for me. "You didn't ask me what kind of car I wanted," I argued. "You've always wanted a hatchback," Dallas reminded me. At least Dallas had the good sense not to buy me a luxury car. I took in a deep breath and met his eyes. His gaze was filled with so much love that it was difficult to stay mad at him. "Thank you, Dallas. But you have to promise me that you won't make another major decision without talking to me," I said. I promise, Dallas said, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. Would you two hurry up? Livy complained. I have a date. I made a mental note to ask intake if the two women that vandalized Livy's car signed up for therapy. It would have to wait until Monday. Dallas pulled up to my house, and I let out a groan. Parked behind the hatchback that Dallas purchased me was a sleek town car. The driver was waiting inside the vehicle. It was either my mother or my sister. Looks like I won't get to take my car for a joyride, I commented. Dallas shot me a sympathetic glance. Do you want me to come in with you? He asked. No. If it's Renee in there, it will only make things worse, I commented. Besides, I'm still mad she lied to my classmates. Dallas nodded in understanding. I let out a sigh when his lips pressed against mine. Will you stay the night with me? He asked, desire briefly flashing in his eyes. My heart began to speed up as butterflies began dancing in my stomach. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He pressed another kiss to my lips. I wanted the kiss to go on longer, but I needed to see who was visiting with Grandma Mabel. If it was my mother, I would have to usher her out of the house as quickly as possible. I better go. I love my grandma too much to leave her alone with my mother or my sister, I grumpily said. I'll see you tonight then, Dallas said. You will. Just text me when you leave the house, I said. I'll pack a bag. After those words, I got out of the SUV and made my way into my house. Chapter 25. Tamara. I doubt that Rodney will agree to that, Marjorie, my grandmother coolly said. Marjorie. So, it was my mother who decided to stop by for a visit. After the stunt that Renee pulled on my last day of class, why had she bothered? Letting out a sigh, I deposited my computer bag and purse on the kitchen table before reluctantly heading into the living room. I don't understand why. Rodney isn't paying any of the expenses, Mom commented. I stared at my mother, who primly sat on one of the recliners, a clipboard resting in her lap. The woman looked dressed for a night out, in a black form-fitting dress, designer shoes, and dark hair that was cut in a stylish bob. On the other hand, Grandma Mabel was in her bathrobe, half sprawled on the couch, her legs covered by one of the throw blankets. What won't Dad agree to? I asked, plopping down into the other recliner. To Thomas walking you down the aisle. After all, Thomas has been your father for years, Mom calmly explained. Anger and annoyance mingled in my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. There was no need to cause drama if I wasn't sure if the wedding was really going to happen. Mom, I'd like my father to walk me down the aisle. Thomas can walk Renee down the aisle when she gets married, I said. Every time I didn't call Thomas Dad, my mother winced. Thomas thinks of you as a daughter, Mom argued. It will hurt his feelings if he isn't part of the wedding. Marjorie, I don't think that your husband cares about Tamara's wedding. He hasn't even called to congratulate her, Grandma Mabel argued. Neither has your son, my mother shot back. Mabel, why does Thomas have to do something that Rodney didn't bother to do? I hated to acknowledge that my mother had a point. My father hadn't once called to see how I was, let alone to discuss my engagement. He wasn't involved, and that was something that I accepted years ago.
Whatever issues Rodney and Tamara may have are between the two of them,
Grandma Mabel replied, her eyes blazing with anger.
Marjorie, is there anything else you would like to discuss?
Tamara, Renee has offered to pay for your wedding dress, Mom announced, as if the news was welcomed. Really? I asked, caught off guard. We have been scouring secondhand shops to find the right one, Mom said. I'd much rather pay for my own dress, I said, now understanding Renee's motives. She was probably searching for the dress that flattered me the least. Once I rejected the dress, she would then paint me as the ungrateful, jealous sister. Don't be stupid. I'd much rather Renee pay for the dress. It will make her feel involved in the wedding. If you refuse, it will offend her, Mom reasoned. Right, because everything is about Renee and how she feels, I thought to myself.
She'll just pick something hideous for Tamara.
My grandmother protested, her eyes hard. Tamara should just appreciate the fact that Renee is making an effort to. I'd rather Renee do nothing, I said, cutting my mother off mid-sentence. Besides, you can't make all the decisions. Dallas has family that would like to be involved. I spoke to Patricia. She's in agreement about the venue and the date. Unlike you, some people understand the demands of Hollywood. Your sister is expected to be on set in January. She is going to star in a dance movie. She has to start training for the role right after your wedding, so it may be a little tight. But if you're reasonable, things will go smoothly, she said. I stood, officially drained by the conversation. Unless I told Dallas that I didn't want to go through with the wedding, this madness wasn't going to stop. I can't deal with this right now, I told my mother. You're acting like a child, my mother shot back. Last I heard, Renee had zero interest in going to my wedding. Now I have to consider her schedule? My mother rolled her eyes. Sisters say a lot of terrible things to one another. Her easy dismissal of my argument made me want to explode. I made eye contact with my grandmother, who had understanding in her gaze. She knew exactly why I was putting up with Mom's antics. On some level, I hungered for a relationship with her. I didn't want to risk sending her away for good. But the woman did get on my nerves. Let's drop this for now. Dallas isn't here, and he deserves a say on when his wedding will be, I said, hoping to prevent my mother from doing any more planning. To my relief, she nodded. Very well. Get dressed. Thomas and I are taking you out to dinner, Mom suddenly announced. Sorry, Mom, I have a date with Dallas. He's taking me to a fancy restaurant, I explained. Tell him to reschedule, Mom ordered. Thomas is looking forward to having dinner with you. Can't we do it tomorrow? I asked, a band of stress beginning to squeeze my chest. Can't you go on a date with Dallas tomorrow? She countered. Dallas made reservations, I diplomatically replied. A look of concern flashed across my mother's face before a scowl took its place. Reservations can be canceled, Tamara. You're being ridiculous. You can see Dallas any other time. No. Sorry, Mom. I'm not going to ditch Dallas. The next time you want to make plans with me, you should ask me first, I said before rushing away, like the coward I was. If only my clients could see how I handled conflicts. As I rushed up the stairs, I felt like a complete fraud. Here I was encouraging clients to solve conflicts, while I couldn't do the same. A knock on my bedroom door caused me to nearly let out a scream. I'd been hiding, hoping that Mom would eventually get tired of talking to Grandma Mabel and leave. I took the world's longest shower and spent time straightening my hair. After dressing in a blue knee-length form-fitting cocktail dress, I applied a bit of makeup. I then took inventory of my meager shoe selection, settling on a pair of strappy sandals that gave me 2 inches of height. After slipping the uncomfortable shoes on, I had begun pacing until hearing the damn knock. "Come in?" I forced out in a shrill voice. The door opened, and Dallas walked into the room. I was so relieved to see him that I ran into his arms. He held me close, his suit jacket brushing my skin. "That bad?" Dallas teased. I pulled away and took a deep breath. "Is she still down there?" I inquired. "Who?" Dallas wondered. "My mother," I responded. Dallas shook his head. "She left an hour ago. Grandma Mabel told me all about her visit. I don't think that your mom trusts us to make any decisions about our wedding. She left the card of a reputable tuxedo rental shop for me," Dallas said, sounding amused. I was glad that someone could find some humor in the situation. All I felt was overwhelmed by it all. I studied Dallas, my eyes landing on his lush lips. I wished that I could get lost in his kisses and ignore the fact that he complicated everything by asking me to marry him. Getting hitched wasn't on my radar 6 years ago. In fact, I saw getting a husband as something that would happen eventually. I had thought of dating as something clinical. I didn't take into account that I'd feel strong emotions and hunger for a life with him. If a client expressed the same sentiments to me, I would have encouraged them to give dating a chance. I shook the regrets out of my mind and focused on something else. "Renee wants to buy me my wedding dress," I said. I allowed the smile to stretch across Dallas's face before speaking. "At a thrift shop. Normally, I am all for a bargain. But I know for sure that Renee would find the most unflattering dress and buy it for me." "You and I could go wedding dress shopping," Dallas offered, which made me grin. "That's sweet, Dallas. But it's bad luck to see the bride's wedding dress before the wedding." "Why didn't you text me before you left the house?" I wondered. "I did. You didn't reply." "Sorry," I said, grabbing my clutch off the bed. "I'm ready to go." Dallas drove me to a rooftop restaurant located in the center of town. After leaving his car with a valet, Dallas escorted me inside the restaurant. The hostess was a tall woman with shoulder-length red hair and overly plump lips. Her green eyes momentarily sparked with recognition. Then she gave me a dirty look. I ignored it, figuring that she was one of the gold diggers that had hoped to bag Dallas. As soon as Dallas's bank account increased, I encountered a few of those types. "Good evening," Dallas said, ignoring the woman's unpleasant expression. "I have a reservation for—" "Follow me," the woman impatiently said. I was surprised that she had the nerve to interrupt Dallas. He didn't seem bothered by it, though, so maybe women had acted this way toward him before. I took his arm, and we followed the hostess to a table in the center of the dining room. As we walked, a few patrons actually glanced our way and snapped pictures with their smartphones. Dallas was the biggest thing in town, so I supposed it came with the territory. As soon as we were shown our table, the hostess stormed off without a word. "She must be on the rag," Dallas commented after we were seated. I chuckled, surprised by what he said. My best friend was usually kind-hearted and would have ignored such rudeness. "Maybe," I said. A waitress walked over to us and deposited glasses of water at our table, She then eyed Dallas with irritation. "Bread and butter?" she asked. "We haven't looked at the menu yet, so—" The waitress stormed off before Dallas could finish his sentence. Maybe she hates my app, Dallas figured. But a bad feeling was beginning to stir in the pit of my stomach. "Did you bring other dates here?" I wondered. Dallas shook his head. "I would have told you if I went on any dates," he reminded me. I felt relieved that Dallas hadn't been seeing other women. "We might as well look at the menu," I figured. "Do you think that the bread and butter is any good?" Dallas wondered. I shook my head and began checking out the long list of appetizers. "Bread and butter?" the waitress demanded a half an hour later. "We'll take the stuffed clams, stuffed mushrooms, and 2 of your surf and turf meals. For the sides, I'd like 2 of your house salads and roasted potatoes," Dallas said. By then, we'd figured out that the waitress wanted minimal interaction with us. Our suspicions were confirmed when the waitress delivered our appetizers and our meals at the same time, an hour and a half later. By then, I was starving and didn't care that everything was on the cold side. Dinner was nice, Dallas and I splitting both appetizers before eating our main courses. We mostly spoke about work and future vacations that we would like to take. Dallas was dying to go on a cruise, while I wanted to spend time at a resort. We had decided against dessert, since it was obvious that the staff of this restaurant had something against us. I didn't know how right we were until the waitress returned.
Chapter 26. Dallas. The cranky waitress that waited on us all night graced us with her presence. She held 2 tall glasses of wine. Neither of us requested wine, so maybe the drinks were an apology for her horrid service. Tamara shot the waitress with a suspicious expression. My girl didn't welcome the surprise, no matter how thoughtful it seemed. But I was used to this sort of thing. I oftentimes was offered discounts, the owners of the restaurants trying to earn free will with the up-and-coming tech entrepreneur. The woman looked as if she was anticipating something. It was the same look that a cruel bully made before imparting a disgusting insult. "Hi, Mr. Washington. I'm not sorry for the long wait. In fact, I think you're a terrible person." Her harsh words rolled off me. What did I care what a waitress I was determined to tip $1 thought of me? I made eye contact with another woman who was walking toward us, her phone held up. "It's all right. I have plenty of enemies," I said, forcing myself to smile. I would never go to this restaurant again. "I just don't like homewreckers," the waitress said, before pouring the contents of both drinks over Tamara's head. "What the hell?" The woman that filmed the entire thing calmly walked off. I glared at the waitress, who was standing there as if she would be greeted by a round of applause. In truth, the other guests ranged between horrified and disgusted. I stood and stripped off my suit jacket and handed it to Tamara. "It's expensive," Mare complained. "That doesn't matter to me," I said, as I picked up a spare folded cloth napkin and began wiping Mare's face. She was in so much shock that she hadn't moved. "Catherine, wait for me in my office," a stern female voice ordered. "Ava, I'm sorry. Now!" she snapped. Moments later, a hand rested on my shoulder. I turned to see the woman that busted Livy's Cadillac standing there. "Where's your sidekick?" I asked. She sighed. "She's the chef. This is my uncle's restaurant," Ava explained. "I'm so sorry. Catherine is usually a good server. Of course, this meal is on the house." Mare got to her feet and shrugged into my suit jacket. She eyed Ava with determination. "Did you hold up your end of the bargain?" Mare demanded. What in the world was this woman talking about? Yes, Tasha and I scheduled appointments, Ava confirmed. Signed up for what? I asked, confused. Mare sighed. Don't you remember, Dallas? You offered to pay for the damages to Livy's Cadillac as long as Ava and Tasha went to therapy? I nodded, the deal vaguely sounding familiar. In truth, I would have paid for the damages anyway, since I understood how it felt to be betrayed. I just figured that I could encourage Ava to seek help in the process. I just hope you aren't offended when I say that we won't be back here, Mare bluntly said. It's not just about the wine. The service here was terrible. Mare launched into an explanation of our evening. Ava rubbed her forehead, looking stressed. What if I offer you a deal on your rehearsal dinner? We have multiple locations, so you won't have to go to this one, Ava bargained. Where are your other locations? Mare inquired, a sparkle in her eye. We have one in Boston and another in Weston, she listed. We'll consider it, Mare said. Ava plucked a card out of her pocket and handed it to me. I'm so sorry, Ava said. Before I could so much as excuse myself, Tasha rushed over, carrying 2 takeout containers. Thank goodness I caught you. I packed you up food to make up for everything, Tasha said. Another waitress hurried over with a bag and took the containers from Tasha. Tasha fled, dressed in her apron and chef's hat. T, you forgot a bag, the middle-aged waitress said. My bad, Tasha replied. She shot me a grin. Dallas, Tamara, it's nice to see you. Sorry for what Catherine did. She's on social media too much. I think she forgot that you guys are real people, Tasha explained. I told her that you weren't a no-good player. Thanks for defending me, Tasha, I said, grateful to the woman. Tasha, you have orders to prepare. Ava's gentle reminder caused a smile to brighten Tasha's face. It's my first week as head chef, Tasha explained. Well, I've got to go. I hope you give Hyacinth another chance, she said. As soon as Tasha walked away, Ava shot us a hopeful expression. I hope you really do give Hyacinth another chance, she told us. I wasn't making the woman any promises. We'll think about it, Mare said. The waitress handed me the bag, and thankfully, we made our exit. I'm going to shower, Mare said, after giving Charlie a gentle pat. My cat was lying on the kitchen table, his green eyes staring straight at me. Okay, I said, handing her the overnight bag she'd stashed in my trunk. Mare kissed my cheek, then headed up the stairs. What a night, Charlie, I told my cat, my hand resting on his shoulder. Charlie swished his tail, a clue that he no longer wanted affection. I removed my hand and lifted the bag of takeout that I left on the kitchen chair. The pleasing smells from the bag confirmed that this would make a delicious meal. I put it in the fridge and headed upstairs, research on my mind. That waitress targeted Mare for a reason. I entered the bedroom, and a sigh of relief left my body when my eyes landed on Mare's overnight bag. I was worried that tonight's incident would have placed distance between us. Deciding that I desperately needed to get to bed, I stripped out of my clothes and put on a pair of sleep shorts. Without a thought, I opened the door to my ensuite bathroom and entered. Steam fogged up the bathroom mirror from the heat of the water. Mare always loved her showers scorching. Are you hungry, Mare? I fished my toothbrush out of the drawer and squeezed toothpaste on it. Not really, only tired, she replied. I'm thinking of going on social media. There's a reason why that waitress acted the way she did. The shower abruptly turned off, and I had to fight not to look into Mara's direction. I quickly brushed my teeth and turned off the tap and went back into the bedroom. Mare followed me out, a towel wrapped around her. Despite it all, hunger to consume her overwhelmed me. I wanted to peel away her towel and explore the only body that I craved. Her dark eyes met mine, the desire in them pushing me to act. I stepped closer to her, my heart pounding so strongly that it felt like my ribs would shatter from the force. Mare eyed my lips, her mouth parted. "I liked the way you looked at me when you first saw me in my dress," Tamara said. The next thing I knew, she dropped her towel, and my eyes beheld beautiful skin. Mare suddenly launched at me, her arms wrapping around my neck. Her hot mouth crashed into mine, and I gripped her hips and deepened the kiss. Our mouths moved with eagerness, my hands leaving her hips and trailing up and down her sides. Mare pulled away, sucking in deep breaths. I led her to the bed and gently pushed on her shoulders. Mare fell back on the bed, and I happily brushed another kiss to her plump lips. In that moment, I knew that I needed to explore every inch of the body that I had wanted for 6 years. A warm kiss to my forehead slowly pushed me into wakefulness. I stifled a yawn with my hand. Goodness, what time was it? All I wanted to do was sink back into sleep. Last night was filled with kisses and touches. We both took our sweet time exploring each other before falling asleep. "Go back to sleep," I muttered. "It's time to face the day, Dallas," Mare insisted. "We could go back to sleep. We don't have plans until tomorrow. We can sleep in till 2. Or we can get out of bed and make breakfast," Mare suggested. It was a good thing that she was amused. "We could eat the leftovers from last night," I offered. "Speaking of, we should probably check our phones," Mare reluctantly said. I wanted to protect her from the toxic Hollywood life that Renee chose to live. It was horrible, but I often wished that Renee would flop. Yes, she acted in TV movies, but her gigs hadn't dried up. Or we could stay in bed. I abruptly buried my face into her neck. Mare playfully poked me in the side. "Get up, Mr. Washington. I'm hungry and I'm craving scrambled eggs with feta cheese," she insisted. I must really love you. I resigned myself to the fact that I couldn't spend the day in bed. I got out of bed and headed to the bathroom to get ready for the day. I found Mare in the kitchen, serving up 2 plates of eggs and toast. Charlie sat on his favorite spot on the kitchen table. I plopped onto a chair, my fatigue coming back to me. Man, was it early. On a good day, I didn't wake up till noon. I was more of a night owl, the darkness helping me supply most of my ideas. Last night hadn't been different. After Mare and I explored one another, she was able to drop off and sleep right away, while I played a game on my phone until 3 a.m. "Here you go, sleepyhead," Mare said, placing a cup of coffee in front of me. I rubbed my eyes and shot her a small smile. "Thanks, sweetheart. Did you do any research while I was in the bathroom?" Before Mare could say a word, my cell vibrated. "It's Byron." "Byron, our app has become the most downloaded app in the App Store." "Me. Why?" "Byron. Because when you're hated, you're loved. Want to drive up to the farm?" "Me. Now?" "Byron. A good place to hide out." I hated Tony Williams, though I hadn't heard of him until he decided to make my life miserable. The insecure guy was only bad-mouthing me because I was young and handsome. It wasn't my fault that he decided to marry a gold digger that was 20 years younger than him. One should only marry for love, not to have a trophy partner. What did Byron say? Mare asked as she placed a plate with eggs and buttered toast in front of me. He thinks that you and I should come to the farm today, I said. Mare frowned. Maybe we can see Pickles. Pickles was a lazy mare that Tamara enjoyed riding. Uncle Fred talked about selling her to me, I said. He always tries to make a buck, Mare said. She sat beside me, her hands reaching for her coffee mug. Aren't you worried about why Byron suggested a night at the farm? Probably to keep us hidden for some reason. I'll have to brave social media after we eat, Mare decided. We shared a meal in relative silence, worries plaguing us both. I had just finished washing the dishes when a visitor barged into our house.
Chapter 27. Tamara. The front door flew open, nearly giving me a heart attack. Livy entered, a bulging bag in her grip. I was further confused when I spotted the gardening gloves on her hands. Livy, how did you get the keys to my place? Dallas asked, puzzlement on his face. I took Tamara's keys while she wasn't paying attention and had my driver make copies. By the way, Donovan sent you poison ivy. I collected all of it, Livy said, tossing the bag in the trash can. I knew that he'd do something like that. Did he leave a note? I asked. Livy scowled. One of Donovan's followers painted the note on Dallas's front door, Livy said. And ice filled my stomach. Breakfast was going to make a second appearance if I didn't take deep breaths. This couldn't be. All of the confidence that I felt while in Dallas's arms was diminishing at the thought that one of Donovan Chambers' misguided admirers had been outside painting Dallas's property while we were lost in one another. I got to my feet and rushed to the door. My heart hammered as I stepped outside in my house slippers. I squeaked when Charlie immediately ran past me and tossed himself onto Dallas's porch chair. After giving the tabby a soft pat, I turned to see that Donovan's follower had spray-painted 2 words on Dallas's front door. In large red letters, he wrote, "Game on." Chills danced up and down my spine, and I had to fight the instinct to run from Dallas. For one thing, Donovan's words weren't going to kill me, though they were annoying. This time, Donovan was playing a psychological game. I wasn't a fighter. If I didn't desire to complete my internship, I would have left town and attempted to build another life. But I couldn't leave Dallas without leaving behind half of my soul in the process. Was being with Dallas a part of my 5-year plan? No. Over the last week, a new plan wormed its way into my heart. It consisted of building a future with someone I was madly in love with. Game on? Dallas asked when he joined me on the porch. Tamara, we have to call the police. We need this documented. A click of a camera made me turn around. There were a couple of vans parked in front of Dallas's house. I glanced down at my t-shirt and tight shorts and blushed. I wasn't looking camera ready, not that it mattered. But part of me couldn't help but acknowledge that I had a few unflattering pictures of me floating around on the web. We aren't famous. Why in the hell are they bothering us? Livy stumbled her way onto the porch, a determined expression on her face. Lovebirds, come in here. It's time to start planning. I wanted to roll my eyes at my friend, but at least she saved us from poison ivy. Dallas shook his head and we followed him inside. As soon as the door closed, Dallas rushed into his office, leaving Livy and I alone. How did you know about the poison ivy? I wondered. A picture of Dallas's house is circulating on Instagram. I saw the mess and had a terrible feeling that the ivy was poisonous. So, you slept over, huh? A blush bloomed on my cheeks and Livy whistled. I needed to say something to distract her. Why did you hit on Byron? I blurted out. It wasn't like it mattered since Byron wasn't interested in Livy. My friend let out a mournful sigh. I thought that we could work together since Byron is Dallas's best man. Okay, I was hoping that he could be my date for the wedding, Livy said. Why not ask Matt? This was the chance for me to understand why in the hell Livy insisted on messing with someone like Matt. He's probably bringing Cindy, Livy brightly responded. I detected no hint of remorse or jealousy on her face. You have been hooking up. I saw the way he looked at you the other night. I decided to leave Dallas and Byron out of it. You caught on rather quickly. I'm surprised. Usually you don't care about what happens in my life. I ignored the shock on her face. I do care, and you know it. Stop the guilt trip now because the answer is no. Oh, come on. I can't come to the farm with you. I rubbed my face. You have to ask Dallas. It's not my place to invite anyone, I said. Dallas exited the office, his handsome face consumed with anger. What was he about to show us? Livy and I jumped to our feet and followed Dallas into the living room. Livy happily fell onto the couch with me beside her. What do you want us to watch, Dee? Livy inquired. Dallas turned on the TV and scrolled to YouTube. My heart sank when he typed in Renee star Cabot and Stella Clark in the search bar. I just knew that this interview would affect me somehow. Mare, you aren't going to like what I play for you, Dallas warned. Then he reluctantly pressed play. What a load of crap, Livy cried. She is dripping with desperation. I couldn't agree more with Livy's observation. Seriously? Renee was in all black as if she were attending a funeral. Even Stella Clark, the gossip queen, hadn't expected Renee to respond the way she had. Dallas's phone rang and he shot me a regretful look. I need to take this. He was obviously concerned for me, which was heartwarming. Go ahead. I'll be fine. Dallas kissed the top of my head and walked into his home office and closed the door behind him. The stress in Dallas's face fueled a sudden burst of anger. My fiancé was a kind-hearted, strong, and loyal person who didn't deserve the chaos that Renee's lies tossed into his life. It pissed me off that the one person who considered everyone's feelings was publicly labeled an uncaring player. What gave Renee the right to play these sorts of games? Most people who can't hack it in a career dusted themselves off and tried something else. Why was she so inclined to feeding the media her stupid lies? In that moment, I knew exactly who was to blame. I got to my feet and stomped to Dallas's room, my mind made up. Hold on, T. You can't make hasty decisions, Livy begged as she followed me. Slow down! I'm too drunk to run. I took deep breaths as I reached my cell phone from my bag. Then I tapped on my mother's name. She had the nerve to send my call to voicemail. Did she think that doing that would deter me? I continued to call her, my heart filled with anger. Livy plopped down beside me and let out a groan. Who are you calling? My mother, I hissed. Livy let out a relieved breath and sprawled on the bed, allowing her shoes to thud against the hardwood. I paid her no mind as I continued to call my mother until she finally got the hint and answered. Tamara, I'm busy, Mom complained. The years of resentment flowed out. I lost the ability to rein it in. You're a monster! How dare you twist something as great as Dallas proposing into a means to get Renee more publicity? Do you have any idea what I've been going through? Someone poured a drink on me, and Donovan got someone to spray paint a message on Dallas's front door. I'm the most hated person in America because of you. I haven't looked at the comments on my Instagram account yet. You have turned my life upside down. I took a breath after speaking, the rage burning in my chest. I did nothing, my mother sternly said. So stop complaining. Your sister has to make a living somehow. It isn't my fault that you got in the way. I knew that conversing with my mother wasn't going to change anything. It was obvious that she was set in her ways. But I had to say one more thing. Did you know that Renee was going to tell the world that I stole her boyfriend? I demanded. My heart rate sped up when I could hear nothing but silence coming from the other line. Mom, you have to answer the question. I sat in on the meeting with Renee's publicist. We all brainstormed together. Your sister needs some buzz leading up to her movie's premiere. The mortgage to our house in Calabasas is on the line. She said these words as if they mattered to me, like I should suffer so she could live in luxury. Do you know what the sad part of all of this is? I'm not surprised this happened. You've always put Renee and her career above everything, and you always will. The finality in my voice must have told her something, because her next words were filled with irritation. Don't be dramatic, Tamara. I'm doing what's best for business, she huffed. I know. You'll never do what's right for me. I accepted that a long time ago. After those words were spoken, I hung up the phone. Well, that sucks. Want some Jack? Livy offered. What I want is a different mother. But I can't make that happen. I muttered to myself, deciding that I could no longer stay seated. Dallas rushed into the room, concern on his face. I instinctively wrapped my arms around him, grateful that I came to my senses and agreed to marry him. I pulled slightly away so that I could kiss his cheek. When are we leaving for the farm? My hands gently rubbed his back. I'm coming along, Livy cheered. I can't wait to road trip with you two. Are you inviting Matt and Cindy? Dallas groaned. Hell no. The last thing I need is those two around. His words caught me off guard, but I was certain that he would tell me what was up when we were alone. The trip might be good for the both of them. Matt is thinking about having Cindy move in with him. Livy's gossip made me feel sick. Yes, Cindy was a pain, but she didn't deserve to toss her life away on a cheating scumbag. So you're done with hooking up with him then? Dallas asked. He called me Cindy in bed. Livy's answer wasn't shocking. It was like Matt not to be concerned enough to remember the name of the woman that he was currently in bed with. I told you so, Dallas grumbled. He was clearly irritated. Just don't bother with Byron. He's in love with some chick named Nevaeh. Nevaeh? My surprised question caused Livy to snort. That's not the strangest name I've ever heard. I once met a girl named Agony. I guess we all know how her mother felt about childbirth, I quipped. Dallas buried his face into my hair and took a deep breath. Livy, if you come along, don't invite Matt, Dallas warned. Livy's disappointed sigh was confusing, but the crazy woman would express her feelings soon enough. Let me go deal with the police, Dallas said. He released me, went into his closet, and shut the door. Moments later, he exited the room wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He shot me a tight smile on his way out of the room. Livy stood and clapped until she saw my scowl. Do not ruin things for Byron. Don't distract him from the woman that he's crazy about. I have no clue why you interfered with Matt and Cindy, but don't do the same with Byron, I lectured. Livy held up her hands, her innocent expression not moving for a second. I won't play with Byron. Honestly, I thought that he would be a good match for me. But Nevaeh bounced in. Through her playful mask, I saw a deeper, nasty emotion. I wrapped my arms around Livy, who actually started bawling. WTF! I held her close as her loud sobs nearly knocked me off my feet. It's all my fault, Livy cried. I wasn't about to ask why Livy was to blame. Instead, I continued holding her. She's gone and it's all my fault. The destructive behavior, downright disturbing nosiness, and her obsession with men was all a means to an end. Livy Stanton was desperate to forget a past trauma. I allowed her to cry, having the feeling that once the outburst of emotion ceased, she'd avoid the topic. Maybe I could encourage her to seek help, preferably with a therapist out of town. Do you want to talk about it? I softly asked Livy. Her sobs slowed, and she stepped away from me. Oh, great. I got snot all over your clothes. You should probably change. Don't want to be covered in snot for your road trip. She sang the words, road trip. Great. She was back to faking it again. I wasn't about to allow her to keep her shield up. I like you better when you act like yourself, I said. I fluffed her blonde curls and grabbed my overnight bag and headed into the shower. Chapter 28. Tamara. Dee, are we there yet? 2 hours later, I was regretting the words I spoke to Livy. It would seem that she was making double the effort at being annoying. I sighed and gazed at Dallas, who was in the driver's seat, wearing a pair of sunglasses. I ached to massage his scalp, my only hesitation being that he was driving. He caressed my hand and butterflies began doing an aggressive break-dancing routine in my stomach. I heard a slurp from the back seat, letting me know that Livy took another sip of vodka. I wanted to pry the bottle from her, worried that she would be drunk as hell by the time we reached the horse farm. Stop hitting the vodka, Livy. I'm too lazy to carry you. It was evident that Dallas was only half teasing. I giggled. You should make Junior carry her, I suggested. Dallas groaned. Fred Jr. was nice, when he wasn't acting like an entitled, spoiled brat. It would be amusing to watch him carry a drunken Livy to the cabin we were staying in. I can walk, Livy shouted. Says the girl that has been sitting for the last hour and a half. Dallas's response prompted another drag from the vodka bottle from Livy. My heart ached for the woman, having the feeling that she was using liquor to drown out the memory of her emotional outburst. I couldn't wait until Dallas and I got a moment alone so I could explain Livy's annoying behavior. I love the both of you so much. You're the first real friends I ever made. Livy slurred. Dallas chuckled and turned on the radio, his attempt at drowning out Livy. Unfortunately, our drunk friend thought that she was Mariah Carey and attempted one of her famed whistle notes. She ended up sounding like a shrieking cat. Dallas found this funny and cracked up. I stared out the window, looking at the sign for the Weston Apple Orchard. Dallas dragged me apple picking for the first time 2 years ago. The only positive thing I could say about the experience was that we munched on apple cider donuts. I learned that day that I had a hatred for the outdoors. At that moment, while Livy was doing her best to emulate a singer, I longed to be in the corn maze alone with Dallas. Yes, she was one of my best friends, but Livy was getting in the way of me enjoying Dallas. Welcome home, nephew, Fred Washington greeted 15 minutes later. He stood on the porch steps of his Victorian mansion, smiling down at the three of us. Our bags were collected by the house staff. The last time I spent time on the farm, I was relegated to staying in the small cabin that Dallas lived in. I was actually hoping for the privacy. Yet again, things were changing. "It's nice to see you, Uncle Fred," Dallas said. To my confusion, Dallas's uncle wrapped his muscled arms around me. I returned the hug, trying not to squirm out of his hold. He followed the hug up with a smacking kiss on my cheek. "Welcome to the family, Tamara. I'm so glad Dallas chose you instead of your disturbed sister." Fred's words made Livy let out a loud laugh. Dallas wrapped an arm around me. "There wasn't a choice, Uncle. Renee lied in the interview. See what I mean? She's a disturbed young lady. You can't trust those Hollywood types."
Preach, Roger.
Livy's enthusiastic words made the poor man arch a brow. "I'm Fred, and it looks like you're 3 sheets to the wind. Dallas, I trust you know where the guest rooms are." Dallas frowned. It was obvious that he wasn't well acquainted with this house. Fred's cheerful nature caused dread to climb up my body. It was obvious that he wanted something from Dallas. His kindness wasn't freely given. Was escaping to the farm a mistake? "I have no clue where you want us to stay," Dallas said. "Oh, just to let you know, Jeannie and I are old-fashioned. You will be staying in separate rooms." His stern words shot disappointment through me. Now that I knew the luxury of sleeping beside Dallas, I didn't think I could go back to sleeping alone.
Sounds practical. Does that mean I can't ride a cowboy?
Livy's drunken question made me want to slap my hand over her mouth. To my relief, Fred let out a chuckle. "No, young lady. My staff are off limits." Livy nodded, and a tall woman wearing a barely there dress sauntered out of the house. I gasped, not understanding what I was seeing. She was taller, her boobs larger, and her face was a bit stiff. Her plump lips stretched in a disingenuous smile that made my stomach twist. Her black hair was now barely past her shoulders, the cut bringing out her stunning beauty. "Via?" Dallas asked. "Oh, good, you know her. This is Junior's girlfriend." Fred's explanation lacked warmth.
Fiancé,
Via corrected. "I'll believe it when he gives you a ring," Fred replied.
You know what ring he's waiting for.
Via fired back.
Via?
Livy drunkenly asked.
Holy crap! Isn't that the girl that cheated on you, Dallas?
In high school, Dallas was quick to clarify. That's in the past.
I see that Tamara is still following you around like a lost puppy dog,
Via commented. Actually, we're engaged, I said, holding up my left hand. Fred's eyes lit up. You see, a man that actually buys a woman a ring. There is hope for your generation. Fred patted Dallas on the back. Via, make yourself useful and show my guests to their rooms. They're staying in the rooms across from Fred's. Via rolled her eyes but turned to face the door.
Here you are,
Via sharply said, gesturing at the slightly open door in a high-ceilinged hallway with unblemished hardwood floors. There are 3 of us, Livy slurred. We need 3 rooms. Roger said no riding cowboys. Via curled her lip, disgusted by Livy's behavior. She started the party early, Dallas replied.
For the record, I knew you were in love with Tamara. I'm sorry for what I did, but you were never serious about me.
The random apology stunned me. Via followed it up by making eye contact with me.
If we're going to be family, I hope we can get along.
Ugh, her being nice to me was a tactical move. Great. Sure, I added, a nod after responding, hoping that it would appease her.
Wait a second. I deserve a round of applause,
Livy shouted. She began clapping, her actions annoying the heck out of Via.
For what?
Via asked, her tone flat.
Dallas and T didn't think I could walk myself here. They thought of making Junior carry me to my room, she blurted out.
Via scowled.
Junior would not have carried you. Now let's get you to bed.
She grabbed Livy's arm and led her to the room to the left of the one we were standing in front of.
I'm not tired,
Livy complained. Via ignored the woman and propelled her into the room. Moments later, she exited and shut the door behind her.
Your friend is snoring to her heart's content. Now that she's out of the way, I have a bone to pick with the both of you.
What would that be? Dallas inquired, confused.
You didn't include a +1 for Fred when you sent him a wedding invitation, she complained.
What? Dallas and I made eye contact, neither of us having a clue of what Via was talking about.
So you weren't the ones to exclude me? Of course you weren't. You had no idea we were dating.
She clearly misinterpreted our reaction. I tried not to panic, thinking that there had to be some mistake. Dallas, let's call some of our friends, I suggested.
Okay,
Dallas rasped out.
Via, we'll see what we can do.
Dallas linked his fingers through mine and led me into the bedroom. It was his, judging by the black suitcase that rested in front of the sleigh bed. We sat side by side, Dallas resting his shoulder against mine. What friends should we call? I wondered.
None of them. I have a bad feeling about this.
I'll try Angela. I pulled my phone out of my purse and called Angela.
Hey girl, I was just thinking about you.
Angela's excited voice caused dread to wash over me like a tide. You got the invitation then? I squeaked out the question, hardly able to contain the impending freakout.
Just got mine this morning. How in the hell did you plan a wedding so fast? Girl, you're amazing. I couldn't do it,
Angela said. Neither could I, but I wasn't about to tell her that. What's the date on the invitation? I just want to make sure that the correct date was printed.
October 28th. That's correct, right?
Renee Star Cabot was at it again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Thanks, Angela.
And it's so cool how we can either text or email to confirm that we're going to the wedding. Smart,
Angela complimented. I wanted to punch something. Instead, I squeezed Dallas's hand, a reminder that we were in it together. Renee wasn't going to take away from the day that we deserved. Thanks so much for confirming it, Angela, I told my friend.
No problem.
I've got to go, but I'll text you with updates, I said before hanging up.
What's the date on the invitations?
Dallas inquired. October 28th, I replied.
Of next year, right?
No, of this year.
I am so sorry, Mare. I had no idea that proposing to you would make Renee go off the deep end like that.
I stood and straddled Dallas's lap, my face close to his. I may hate change, but I love you so much. Don't regret proposing to me. If you hadn't, I would have walked around like an idiot, not realizing that I am in love with you. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed his lips. Dallas held me close, our kiss deepening. His mouth was addicting. His kiss an experience that I wanted to indulge in for a lifetime. I broke the kiss, my hunger for him barely being tamed. We have two choices. We could either tell everyone that there was some sort of mistake with the invitations, or go through with it, I said.
Or we can get married in Vegas.
I kissed Dallas's cheek. I hate weddings. Vegas would have been my choice, I admitted.
It can still be your choice, Dallas insisted. To hell with Renee's antics.
I can make a post that our wedding is canceled and we can go off to Vegas when you're ready. You mean when we're ready? I corrected. No, Mare. I was ready to marry you 2 years ago when you brought me soup and crackers and cleaned up my vomit after I got the stomach flu. Or maybe it was when you supported my decision to create a gaming app, even though you have zero interest in gaming. Maybe it was when you went along with my plans, even when they pushed your comfort zone. Or maybe... I kissed him, my heart nearly exploding with the amount of love that lived in there just for him. He held me close as our lips danced once again. My entire body was consumed with a desperate need to experience more of the sensations from last night. My hips aligned with his and I moved, enjoying the pleasure that consumed me. Dallas briefly pulled away to tug at my shirt. I lifted my arms, and my shirt fell onto the wood. His gaze studied me, his eyes full of love and amazement. Next thing I knew, his shirt disappeared, giving my hands access to a scrumptious skin. Dallas grew impatient, and I found myself on my back, his hands removing my shoes, pants, and underwear. My bra was the last barrier, and it vanished. I'm not stopping, he warned. I don't want you to, I said. I caressed Dallas's face, my heart pounding from what I was going to experience for the first time. Dallas gently kissed my lips, his hands exploring my body. I felt loved, cherished, enchanted by the man in my arms. When our bodies finally connected in the ritual that nearly overwhelmed my senses, I no longer had any worries. A kiss to my bare shoulder caused my eyes to open. I rubbed my eyes, letting out a long yawn. Dallas brushed a kiss to my forehead. The scent of his aftershave was strong, telling me that he'd just showered and shaved. I slowly sat up, the sheets pulling at my waist, causing the air-conditioned air to kiss my bare skin. How long was I out? I asked, having a feeling that Fred wasn't going to approve of what Dallas and I got up to under his roof. It may chafe against his old-fashioned sensibilities. I glanced at my fiancé, who was dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. I took some clothes from your bag, he explained. You can grab a shower in here. I got out of bed and winced at the soreness in some recently used places and walked into the bathroom. Dallas hung my clothes on one of the towel racks. I turned on the shower, allowing it to warm before stepping in. For the first time, I felt certain of the path that I was forging with Dallas. No matter how much Renee pushed, it would only bring us closer together.
Chapter 29. Dallas. Dallas, just the guy I wanted to see. Uncle Fred's cheerful voice grated on my nerves. While I worked for him, he couldn't be bothered to say 2 words to me. I stepped into his office, which was functional. The only warmth in the place, a framed photo of Aunt Jeannie hanging on the wall. He sat behind his oak desk, which was complete with an office phone and laptop. 2 minutes ago, I had received a call to visit him. Mare was still in the shower. The thought of that nearly stole my concentration. But the calculating expression on his face told me that I'd better focus on my uncle. Thanks for allowing us to stay here. None of that. You're family. You're welcomed here any time. What in the hell was this man's endgame? You wanted to see me? I might as well get to the point. I hardly spoke to the man, the lack of ease conversing with him evident. Dallas, why don't you have a seat? Fred insisted. I sat on the wooden chair in front of his desk, resisting the urge to pull out my phone. Relax, Dallas. This is a positive meeting. Maybe he wanted to speak about our wedding. Hopefully he wouldn't be disappointed to hear that Mare wanted to marry in Vegas. What good news do you have for me? I asked. Well, I'm retiring. What in the hell did that have to do with me? Congratulations. Are you going to stay on the farm or will you buy a property somewhere? Your Aunt Jeannie's family lives in Florida. We bought a house in Tampa. Is Junior excited about taking over the farm? Oh, he isn't taking over the farm, my uncle corrected. He has no interest in living here. I bought him a pizza place to manage in Florida. The farm is going to you and Byron. I was a gamer who loved horses, but not enough to raise them. Uncle Fred, I appreciate your offer, but I'm an app developer, not an equestrian enthusiast. You've got the wrong guy. This will be your refuge. In fact, I encourage you and Tamara to move in. I know you have no desire to host events. I stopped booking events last week. So, if you're no longer hosting events, why are you leaving the farm to me? I asked. Fred smiled. It's what Steve would have wanted. Dallas, this was once his farm. He transferred the deed to me 15 years ago. Now, I'm giving it to you. If only I had some confirmation of what my father would have wanted. What if Mom allowed us to have a relationship? Would I be grateful for the inheritance? Maybe I would have tossed the opportunity back in Uncle Fred's face. I needed to speak with Byron, who would provide me some much-needed insight. When are you turning the farm over to us? The stubborn expression on his face told me that he wasn't taking no for an answer. After Byron marries, Fred replied. Considering that Byron wasn't in a serious relationship, relief filled my body. This situation was a far-off problem. Does Byron know about this? Fred nodded. Just told Byron a half hour ago. Why don't you take your lovely lady for a ride? She does love pickles. Tamara would probably be excited about visiting the mayor who only loved her. I'll talk to her about it, I told him. Uncle Fred's dismissive gesture told me that our time speaking had come to an end. Fred, I glanced at the doorway to see Vivian Washington standing in the doorway. She was short, with black hair and golden brown skin that was infused with a healthy glow. Her blue eyes held shock when she laid eyes on me. I needed to leave swiftly. Shock filled me when Vivian's arms wrapped around me. I patted her shoulder, trying to convey the gratefulness I felt toward her. She could have hated the bastard son of her husband. Instead, she chose to treat me as if I was an old friend. After she pulled away, her eyes took in my face. I'm so excited you finally came to your senses, Dallas. Byron speaks highly of Tamara. Is she here? Yes, Vivian, she's here. I'm thinking about taking her horseback riding. Vivian clapped. How fun! I'm here to visit Jeannie. We're about to have drinks by the garden. Why don't you both come and say hello? I'd like to meet the woman that Byron calls a friend. Damn, I was a sucker for kind people. Let me get her, I said. Thankfully, I left the room unimpeded. Going somewhere? Via asked as soon as I stepped out of the office. Crap. Coming face to face with my ex was inconvenient. It brought back the memory of Donovan shooting Tamara at our prom. I was desperate to forget it, but couldn't get the image of Tamara lying face down on the dance floor out of my mind. I meant what I said, Dallas. I'm sorry for what happened in the past. I shouldn't have gotten between you and Jared. Jared? That's a person I hadn't thought about since he betrayed me. Curiosity took hold, which was why I opened my big mouth. What happened to Jared? Sadness filled Via's face, her eyes haunted by something I didn't understand. He's blind, Via whispered, as if the news was something shameful. He lost his sight 2 years ago. I think that he's still living at home. Via shook her head. You abandoned him, I guessed. Via scowled at me. He's blind. What did you expect me to do? It's not like I wanted to spend my life taking care of him. I don't know much about blindness, but I'm pretty sure that a blind person can take care of themselves. I secretly hoped that Junior would come to his senses. It was obvious that Via wasn't the type to stick around when tragedy struck. My heart went out to Jared, someone who was vain and thrived when he was the life of the party. I want a husband who can provide for me. Anyway, have you worked on your wedding list? So eager to watch your ex get married? I asked, just to needle Via. I'm eager to watch my fiancé's favorite cousin get married. Junior only favored me for the simple fact that I wasn't Byron. The two men got along as well as tornadoes and airplanes. Mare and I haven't gotten a chance to work on the guest list, Via. You only asked us this afternoon, I pointed out. Speaking of my bride, I've got to find her. She's on the patio having drinks with Jeannie. I stepped out of the sliding glass doors and walked toward my fiancé. Mare was seated beside my Aunt Jeannie, sipping a glass of water. Her eyes were empty, her posture stiff. Something was upsetting her. Livy, who was thankfully dressed in a blue sundress, was sipping a fruity drink that was complete with an umbrella. Aunt Jeannie, a tall woman with chocolate-brown skin and black chin-length hair, sat beside Tamara, her hand resting on my fiancé's shoulder. Hi, ladies, I greeted. Livy shot me a dirty look, but Mare didn't acknowledge me. A silent treatment? Really? After what we shared, Mare was resorting to refusing to speak to me? Trying to ignore her attitude, I sat beside Livy, who leaned away from me. Livy, what did I do? I whispered. After taking a long sip of her drink, she placed it on the coaster and tapped at her phone. Moments later, the phone in my pocket vibrated. I immediately pulled out my phone and opened the link that Livy sent me. Are Dallas, Washington and Renee Starr Cabot truly over? I read the headline in disbelief. What blew my mind even more was that the article included a picture of Renee and I kissing. Damn, how in the hell had I forgotten about that random cameraman that was happy to photograph us while we were speaking in the lobby of the Westin Hotel? Dallas, tell me that this picture is photoshopped, Tamara pleaded. Mare, it isn't what you think. Great. I just uttered the trademark line used by cheaters everywhere. In my case, the line fit well. Mare got to her feet, her eyes holding pain. What do you mean, Dallas? The way Tamara slowly spoke each word of that sentence told me that she was about to lose her temper. Renee kissed me, but I didn't respond. The conversation was weird. She tried to invite me to her room to... And you didn't tell me? Tamara's shouted question made my heart sink. What the hell, Dallas? What happened to No More Secrets? Why didn't you let me know that Renee actually kissed you? Why am I finding out now? Why in the hell did you allow me to get blindsided? Anger began to pulse through me. Tamara knew damn well that her sister was known to orchestrate events for attention. Why was she reacting as if I willingly kissed Renee? Why couldn't Tamara calm down and see reason? Are you upset that Renee kissed me? Or are you upset that you have no control over the situation? Those words flew out, hurting her hard. Tamara stormed back into the house. I groaned, rubbing my forehead, stress intermingling with the anger. What a crap storm, I grumbled. Livy slid her drink over to me. Take a sip. Might make you feel better. No thanks, Livy. I know you're pissed at me. For all I know, you poisoned it. Why in the hell did you throw T's need for control in her face? Because that's the real problem. Damn it, she acted more inconvenienced than mad that another woman was kissing me. So you wanted T to be jealous? So you wanted T to be jealous? Livy asked. Didn't it occur to you that she wasn't jealous because she knows how you feel about her? Livy's words broke through the haze of anger, making me feel guilty. Of course, after what happened between us, Tamara was secure in our relationship. I had to apologize to her. I got to my feet, but Livy shook her head. If you go after her now, you're just going to argue. Let T fall apart and figure things out. You can't save her this time, Dee. Save her? What in the world was this broad talking about? I never saved Tamara from anything. All I'd ever done was try to be a support to her, someone that would help her deal with the crap that her sister tossed at her. Tamara was strong, capable, and developed coping mechanisms that saw her through the drama. Sit down, nephew of mine, Jeannie insisted. Your friend is right. Usually when she's upset, she runs to you. It's time that she leans on her friends. Your relationship will be better off for it. I collapsed in the chair, feeling stupid for losing my cool. I loved Mare more than anything. My entire being wanted to wrap her up in my arms and tell her that everything was okay. But at that moment, I knew that I was the last person she wanted to see. For the first time, I truly understood Tamara's reluctance to change our relationship.
Chapter 30. Renee. I walked into a boutique by the hotel, wearing a pair of designer sunglasses. I wore leggings with a blue off-the-shoulder top, along with black flats. It was a subdued look that could pass as decent in my circle. The place was dead, only one customer in sight. I eyed the row of dresses that were apparently handmade by the owner. The air conditioner caused me to shiver the deeper I walked into the racks. My ears perked up when I neared the customer, a tall blonde hefting a bulging messenger bag.
Isn't that some crap? I can't believe the mess that's on social media,
the blonde complained. I don't follow that nonsense that much. All I know is that Renee Starr Cabot volunteered at the soup kitchen last week. You should have seen her. She was talking to the locals, taking pictures with the homeless, and handed out soup. Of course, her crazy mother took pictures of the whole thing. I tell you, Marjorie never changed. I went to high school with her. She told everyone that she would be this huge star. Well, I guess her daughter's close enough. That rant was made by who I presumed was the owner, a short woman with long red hair. Should I approach?
I don't get it, though. Dallas was always in love with Tamara. I remember those two when they were in my study hall,
the blonde replied. Rage bubbled in my stomach, furious that this stranger dared to share her incorrect observation. Dallas and I were meant to be. I could feel it when his lips brushed mine for the first time. If only he could realize that sympathy isn't enough to hold a relationship together. Then why did he kiss the sister? The shop owner wondered.
That didn't look like a passionate kiss to me. I bet it was photoshopped,
the study hall teacher speculated. Oh, hell no. That kiss was real and honest. Wait until I set that woman straight. I eyed the rack closest to me. There was a rack of brightly colored sundresses. I selected a pink sundress and was elated to discover that it was in my size. Of course, I wouldn't bother going into one of those congested dressing rooms. If the dress didn't fit, I'd give it away to one of the fans that loved buying my clothing. I stepped out into the open, the boutique's owner's horrified gasp alerting the blonde. The blonde eyed me and didn't seem fazed by my presence. In fact, she scowled at me.
Leslie, I'm going to check out the formal dresses,
the blonde said, being sure to smack me with her bag as she walked past me. Well, I supposed she was most definitely not a fan. I eyed Leslie, who seemed unimpressed with me. Her store was nearly empty.
One tweet could send flocks of people to her pathetic shop. How dare she treat me that way?
I need to be rung up for this, I informed the woman, handing the sundress to her. I knew your mother, Leslie told me. She was thinking hard about something which caused impatience to war within me. I needed to meet with Mary in an hour. The fallout from my interview with Stella Clark had been mostly positive, though everyone has naysayers. I didn't pay much attention to my haters. As long as I was trending on Twitter, my star power would strengthen. $45, Leslie said 2 seconds after stepping behind the register. I fished my wallet out of my purse and handed her my credit card. The obnoxious bell sounded, announcing the arrival of another customer. Maybe my fans got wind of where I was already. Leslie frowned at me. Your card declined. There's something wrong with your machine, I insisted. Stupid cash registers. I needed to keep my cool since losing my temper may affect my nice girl image. Leslie tried swiping the card again. Sorry, it declined. That card has a $20,000 limit. There's no way that I spent that much, I insisted, my heart racing. Leslie, how much is her purchase? A vaguely familiar male voice inquired. $45, she replied. I'll take care of it. The man replied. I spun to face my birth father, Rodney Freeman. He was tall, muscular, and wore a short-sleeved, button-down with black jeans and black sneakers. He wore an Apple Watch, and there was a bulge in his breast pocket. I could barely make out the edge of a box of cigarettes. Smoking is terrible for you, I blurted out. Rodney frowned down at me. You're welcome, Renee. Right. I didn't say thank you for him buying the dress. My throat tightened when my eyes took in his face. Rodney seemed like a nice man, someone that would have loved me. Would Rodney have allowed Mom to groom me into a Hollywood star? Maybe not, since Mom lied to Thomas, making him believe that I belonged to him. Renee, you all right? Damn it. I was obviously falling apart. After declaring that I wasn't his biological father, Thomas flew to New Jersey to spend some time with one of his friends. He asked my mother and I not to contact him. Can we talk? I have something to tell you. Rodney looked annoyed, which didn't bode well for me. Okay. Let me grab the dress I ordered for Tamara, and we can leave, he offered. Jealousy roared within me. Of course Tamara was the lucky one, the person who knew who she belonged to. I was the pawn, a means to an end. If Tamara had been the one with talent, Mom would have abandoned me. The thought caused sadness to fill me. For the first time, I considered that perhaps Mom only saw me as a ticket to an easy life. After all, she made herself scarce after Thomas's confession. In fact, except for a few good mornings and I'm visiting a friend, I hadn't seen much of my mom. Here you go, Rodney said, handing me a shopping bag. Thank you. Want to grab coffee? There's a place next door that's surprisingly good. Okay, I replied. He led the way out of the boutique, a teenager snapping a picture of us. I pretended not to notice and walked into the coffee shop with a man who was unaware of our blood ties. Why don't I grab a table? I remember Tamara telling me that you preferred tea. Is that still true? Yes. Green tea with lemon, please, I replied. Rodney nodded, and I found a debatably clean table in the back. I sat down and made sure to keep my purse on my lap. Here you go, Rodney said a couple of minutes later. Iced coffee? I asked him, gesturing to his cup. Yes, with Oreo swirl. It's my weakness. Rodney, I'm just going to get this out there. Thomas told me something a couple of days ago. Mom and you hooked up 22 years ago. She lied to you. Thomas isn't my biological father. As soon as he found out, he ran off. The bitter words caused my tear ducts to act up. I swiped at a tear. What are you saying, Renee? Rodney asked. He took a sip of his chocolate-filled iced coffee, as if it would give him strength. You're my biological father. I understand that you can't take my word for it. We can take a DNA test if you want. His polite smile turned to suspicion in seconds. Is this another one of your games, Renee? Not at all. You can even ask my mother. Hell, call Thomas. We'll have to do a DNA test. But I'm not sure what it will change. Thomas has been your father for your entire life. A blood test won't change that. I wish that Thomas felt the same way. He left me, I said, panic beginning to build up. Was this a mistake? Renee, Tamara can barely deal with the stunt you pulled. Could you imagine what it would do to her if I was your biological father? I'm sorry if this sounds cruel, but I have to do what's best for the daughter that I spent years trying to protect. You didn't make things easy, especially when you wrote a letter to the parole board supporting Donovan Chambers' release. Great! I was being rejected because of Tamara Freeman, the boring, plain sister who stole my soulmate. Why did it seem that everyone felt sorry for her? I needed to do something to stop her wedding. My sister was a control freak who despised change. Choosing a wedding date for her at random should have been enough to frustrate her. Why hadn't she thrown a tantrum when the wedding invitations were sent out? Renee, what do you say for yourself? Great. How was I going to explain why I was in support of Donovan being released? I cleared my throat, debating on what I should tell Rodney. The man already didn't seem thrilled about being my father. How would he react if he knew the truth? I bet he would dismiss any opportunity of having a relationship with me. He deserves a second chance. He did his time, and as far as I know, he has done everything to better himself. Rodney shook his head. Do you have any idea what that shooting did to Tamara? His words were soft, but I heard the pain in them. Yeah, it made Dallas feel sorry for her. If Donovan Chambers hadn't attacked Tamara on our prom night, Dallas would have belonged to me. I'm sure it was traumatizing, but you never visited her. You never called to see if she was okay. You never sent her flowers or apologized. You forgot your sister existed until you needed her to show up at that stupid Renee Day celebration. It was clear that we weren't getting anywhere. Your perspective is so one-sided, I blurted out, frustrated with this conversation. Yep, that outburst was a terrible mistake. You've got to be kidding me. How is my perspective one-sided? While Tamara got to live her happy little life away from Mom and her money-hungry attitude, I got her all to myself. I'm 22 years old and never have traveled without my mother. She maxed out one of my credit cards today, Rodney. That's why I couldn't pay for the dress. At least Tamara is free of her. Rodney let out a sigh. You're 22, Renee. Cut her off. Why? So I can get rid of the only parent that wants something to do with me? Rodney rubbed his forehead. Renee, I'm sorry about how Marjorie treats you. You deserve so much better. If the DNA test proves that I'm your father, I'll do my best to be there for you. But you're grown, and you're strong enough to stand on your own.
I wanted to toss my green tea at him and beg Thomas to come back. He at least loved me. Rodney viewed me as a problem he needed to solve. I let out a breath and took a sip of tea. Rodney wouldn't love me overnight. He clearly blamed me for all of Tamara's problems, which was ridiculous. If only she wasn't engaged to my soulmate, I wouldn't need to fight for him so hard. Once Tamara broke the engagement, everything would be right in the world. I contemplated approaching my sister directly. Would she see reason? No clue, but something had to give. I couldn't lose the opportunity to be with Dallas Washington. Chapter 31. Tamara. "You're going to ride the mare or brush it half to death?" Byron asked. I must have been lost in thought, brushing the beautiful sable horse. Pickles was standing still, occasionally butting my hand with her nose, her way of showing affection. "I don't think I have the time. Dallas and I need to be at Patricia's house in an hour and a half. That means that I have 5 more minutes to hang with Pickles." "Have you spoken to Dallas?" I spent the night scouring social media trying to get a feel for what everyone thought. So far, the opinion varied. Some people thought that I was shady, needy, and vile. But some of my classmates were weighing in, offering anecdotes, old photos, and opinions. They all believed that the kiss with Dallas was photoshopped. I badly wished that it was the case. Nope. Dallas allowed Renee to kiss him. He was always afraid of offending someone, preferring to smooth out uncomfortable situations. If he loved me, why not defend us? "No, I've mostly kept to myself," I responded. "You going to let Renee win?" Ugh, why did everything always come down to Renee? This has nothing to do with her. Dallas could have pulled away from her, but he didn't. I placed the brush on the peg and patted Pickles on the neck. "I'll try to ride you sometime, girl." "Look, Tamara, I'm not good at this sort of thing, but I can tell you that Dallas loves you. Don't stay mad at him too long," Byron warned. Yeah, anger was reasonable. All I could think was, the entire world thinks that you're a horrible boyfriend-stealing hussy. I was helpless and didn't have a platform to defend myself. Even if I could defend myself, what could I say? My fiancé kissed my sister because he was just being polite. How many people would believe that? Thanks for the advice, Byron. My flat response made Byron's face fall. He was probably hoping that he could speak magic words that would fix everything. "I'll let you leave to get ready then." Dallas's brother gestured to the exit. I gladly took it, walking the half a mile back to the Victorian house. "There you are," Livy sang. I had expected my room to be empty. Instead, Livy sat on the bed dressed in a pink mini dress and matching high heels. Her face was heavily made up, giving her the too much frosting look. "Why in the world are you dressed like that?" "I have a date with Phil. So, are you going to keep avoiding me, or will we talk it out?" Talk what out? All I wanted to do was take a quick shower and change into the dress that I packed for dinner. "T, Dallas didn't mean to hurt you. Why not hear him out? He'd do the same for you, and you know it," Livy insisted. I glared in Livy's direction. "What are you up to?" She pressed her hands to her chest and appeared offended. "I only have your best interests at heart, T. Don't worry about me. Trust me when I say that your sister is playing the media. I think her endgame is to have you end your engagement." "Why would I end my engagement? I'm angry with Dallas, not out of love with him." Livy sighed in relief. "You might want to reassure your fiancé. I think he believes that you don't want anything to do with him." "I'll talk to him." Livy cheered and sprang to her feet. "I'll see you tomorrow. Phil will take me back to Wallace. I've made an appointment for you with Pastor Graham and a bridal boutique. You won't have your wedding in Weston since you hate it there so much. We'll shop around until you find your perfect venue. Feeling flattered, I wrapped my arms around Livy. I supposed I could have gone to her and expressed my frustrations. Hell, Byron tried to reach me. I needed to work on letting other people in. Thanks, Livy, I said. She smirked, kissed me on the cheek, and rushed away. Dallas and I met on the porch. His hands were stuffed in the pockets of his dress pants. He wore a button-down and a black tie. His red eyes spoke of very little sleep. Dallas, I'm still pissed at you, I blurted out. Dallas nodded. Sorry. The kiss was just so unmemorable that I forgot about it. I chuckled. My fiancé could be absent-minded at times. But I still want to marry you. I don't know about Vegas. I just want us to have an event that we can be proud of. Livy made an appointment for us. I know. She texted me about it. We should give it a shot. If nothing works, Vegas can be our backup, I said. Despite how annoyed I was with Dallas, I craved the strength of his arms. I launched at him and wrapped my arms around him, and he held me close without hesitation. I missed you, sweetheart, he whispered to me. I missed you too. I tilted my head up and went on my tiptoes to press a gentle kiss to his lips. We didn't have time to deepen the kiss. Patricia threw a fit whenever her son was late. Dallas pulled away and held out his hand to me. Let's go, Mare. I'm sure Mom's got a feast waiting for us. I took his hand and gave it a squeeze. You're here, Patricia shrieked. We entered the kitchen, the air carrying delicious scents. Patricia pulled me into her arms, her embrace warm. I'm so glad Dallas came to his senses, she whispered to me. I felt love and acceptance flow through me. She released me to hug her son. Come on, guys. Everyone is waiting for you outside. We followed her into the backyard where the picnic table was covered in a white, disposable tablecloth. There were covered dishes and a stack of plastic plates and cups in the center of the table. Byron, Livy, Angela, Dad, Patricia's husband, Larry, and my grandma Mabel were already seated. Dad, I called, rushing over to him. He stood and met me halfway, his strong arms holding me tight. Hey, Tamara. It's nice to see you. I pulled away and frowned. Where's Holly? I wondered. Dad shook his head. She had to work, but she picked out a gift for you. I smiled and kissed his cheek. Then I greeted the other guests. When I got to Livy, I arched a brow. She was thankfully dressed in a green dress and flats, something less revealing. I thought you had a date. Patricia wanted to surprise you guys, Livy said. Footsteps approached, and I wanted to let out a groan when Cindy and Matt arrived. I managed a gracious wave and took the seat between Livy and Angela. Angela shot me a warm grin. Patricia allowed me to make a cake for you. Wait until you see it, she said. Okay, everyone, the guests of honor are here, Patricia said, obviously wanting to make a speech. All I'm going to say is that I'm grateful that Dallas and Tamara found one another. Now, let's say grace. After a quick prayer from Patricia, the food was revealed. Grilled steaks, mashed potatoes, Brussels sprouts, mac and cheese, rolls, and potato salad. I happily filled my plate and took a few bites before the questions started. Tamara, why didn't you come to me when it came time to plan your wedding? That came from Grandma Mabel. We didn't send out the invitations. I think that either Renee or Marjorie took the initiative. We don't even think we want the wedding in Weston, Dallas explained from his spot beside Byron. That reeks of Renee. She's probably hoping that all of the surprises will push T into calling off the engagement, Livy speculated. Makes sense, Cindy agreed. We all know that Mare likes control. I eyed Dallas, who glowered at Matt. Still thinking of Vegas? Mabel wanted to know. We could all take a trip out there, Livy sang. What about a destination wedding? One of my friends had a wedding in Aruba and it was spectacular, Cindy gushed. I don't have a passport yet. I want to hold off on leaving the country. But maybe we could do Hawaii, I suggested. Or you can check out some churches in the area, Patricia hopefully said. I'm not against it. I just don't want to have the wedding that Mom or Renee planned behind my back, I assured my future mother-in-law. Mare and I want no fuss. Just a day we can be proud of, Dallas added. A car pulled into the driveway, and the confused expressions that Patricia and Larry shot each other made my chest tighten. Moments later, Thomas walked over to us, an iPad in his grip. Sorry for disturbing you, Tamara. Matt said that I could find you here, my stepfather said. Thomas's exhaustion hunched his shoulders. He handed me the iPad, which was protected by a functional black case. What is this? I asked. This is the wedding iPad that Renee and your mother were working with. It has a list of people that received invitations, along with the contact for the caterers and flower shop. I hope that this can help. Thanks, Thomas, I replied, moved that he would do something like this for me. Thomas, want some food? We have plenty. Patricia's invitation made my stepfather smile gratefully. Thanks, Patricia. I can't stay long. I just came here to give you guys the iPad. Thomas was truly too good for my mother. He sat at the other end of the table beside Cindy. My father watched Thomas's every move, which was confusing. From what I understood, the men got along. Let me see, Libby begged. I handed her the iPad without a fight. What's the password? End wedding 1, 2, 3, Thomas replied. It's all lowercase. I guess that answers our question, Cindy snorted. They both want Dallas and I to break up. But why? I eyed Thomas, who was helping himself to the potato salad. Renee's image requires her to have a sophisticated husband. I told her that Dallas has no interest in her, but she didn't believe me. Annoyance consumed Thomas's handsome face, letting me know how tiresome the conversation with Renee truly was. What happened to little Seven? I asked. He used Renee to make his ex jealous, Thomas replied. So she only wants me for my image. Dallas's eyes flashed with so much rage that I worried that he would hunt Renee down and give her a piece of his mind. The last thing I needed was for him to be seen with her. I think Renee is in love with you. Renee sometimes lies to herself. She strongly believes that you feel bad for Tamara, Thomas said. Dallas shook his head. When you talk to your daughter, tell her that I'm madly in love with Tamara. I grinned, enjoying his proclamation. Thomas glanced at my father, pain in his eyes. She's not my daughter. I found out last year. I tried to forgive Marjorie, but... Rodney Freeman, do you have something to tell us? Grandma demanded. Apparently, I'm Renee's biological father. But Thomas, even if that's true, you raised Renee. I will do nothing to get in the way of your relationship. I already have a daughter, Dad insisted. Thomas shook his head. I don't know. Every time I look at her, it's a reminder of the years I wasted on Marjorie. Renee was my full-blooded sister? Ugh! That changed nothing. She was still self-centered, attention-hungry, and manipulative. But was it right that Dad wanted nothing to do with her? I shouldn't be surprised, since he used the hands-off approach when it came to raising me. Even though Renee wasn't the best person, did she deserve to be deserted by the father that she loved? Blood or not, Thomas had been there for her since birth. Grandma Mabel seemed disappointed by the news. She couldn't stand my sister. You'll just have to take a DNA test, Dad. You know how much Mom likes to lie, I said. Dad nodded, and the conversation was dropped. The rest of the evening was lovely. After dinner, the guests all hugged us goodbye. Dallas and I spent some time with Patricia and Larry watching a Lifetime movie. The guys suffered through the mushy movie, while Patricia and I were extremely invested. Dallas and I then drove back to the farm, where we were forced to part for the night. I made sure to give him a passionate goodnight kiss and convinced myself to honor Fred's wishes. It sucked sleeping alone. Chapter 32. Tamara. The ringing of my cell phone alarm announced that my long day was over. The day started at 5:30 with an hour's drive to Wallace. Then I rushed into the house I shared with Grandma Mabel to quickly change my clothes and take my new car to work. There was only one suspicious-looking vehicle sitting in front of the center. Either people weren't interested in our family saga, or the paparazzi didn't want to disturb the lives of the mentally ill. I was especially grateful that Donovan hadn't done anything too creepy. There were a few internet trolls, but I was beginning to realize that they didn't matter. After a long day of seeing clients, the end of my appointment with the suit-clad Edward arrived.
Damn, we ran out of time. I didn't get to tell you what happened with your supervisor.
Is this something you can tell me on the way out? I offered, concerned about being blindsided by Dean during our review.
Virginia's upset at you for having the trauma counselor call her,
he bluntly said. I rubbed my forehead. It's the best thing for your marriage.
I know. But at least she's meeting her next week.
I smiled, hoping that Livy wasn't the one that ended up with her case. I liked my friend too much to force her to endure something like that. Thanks for letting me know, Edward, I said, shooting my client a smile.
No problem. You're a nice young lady with a good heart. You're the only therapist that seemed to care about me.
I nodded and escorted Edward to the lobby. I watched as he left the building and headed to his car. Moments later, I went back into the elevator and headed to Dean's office. I knocked on the door and entered after I heard a friendly, "Come in." Dean grinned at me as I walked over to one of the plush chairs that faced his desk. The other chair held Livy, of all people. Why? She shot me a reassuring expression, her laptop resting on her lap. I sat and placed my computer bag by my feet, my hands shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it.
Tamara, I want to start off by saying you have been a wonderful intern and I gave you a glowing report, he announced.
A knock on the office door prevented me from expressing my gratitude. Professor Gomez entered the room, dressed in a button-down shirt, tie, and slacks. Right. Of course he would be here for this sort of thing. My professor shot me a kind smile before sitting on the chair beside mine. Dean smiled at Professor Gomez like he was a welcomed old friend.
Hi, Paul. We were just speaking about the difference that Tamara made here. Overall, she has performed to the best of her ability. I have spoken to each of her clients, and most of them found that she was responsive and found her guidance helpful. However, one of the things that I find the clients complaining about is Tamara's obsession with time.
Ugh. I set boundaries and wasn't going to apologize for it.
Tamara, what do you have to say in regard to the critique? Professor Gomez inquired.
I only set the alarm for 2 clients. It's because both of them have the tendency to cross boundaries and attempt to go over their time. Of course, Edward and Virginia would offer that kind of critique. If I may interject, I know who Tamara is referring to. This particular couple doesn't know anything about boundaries, Livy said.
Another critique I received was that you seemed detached at times.
Dean listed. That was a matter of opinion. I was always present with every client, despite what issues I had. I took the leave your crap at the door suggestion seriously. I think that certain clients don't like when I ask the tough questions, I replied. But that's feedback I'm going to take seriously. I know I'm inexperienced and there are things I need to work on. Dean nodded.
Tamara, do you primarily want to counsel couples?
Dean asked. Yes.
Is that why you referred one of your clients to a trauma counselor?
Yes. I think she has trauma that needs to be faced before she can have a healthy relationship, I replied.
Tamara, if you're interested in being a marriage counselor, we do have a part-time position available for you,
Dean said. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but at least I made some sort of impression. I accept, I replied. Livy shot me a wide grin.
Great. Some of your clients will be switched around. You're required to work 20 hours a week.
Okay, I said, This opportunity was a lifeline that I was willing to grasp. "Sweet ride," Livy complimented when she hopped into the passenger side of my car. I turned the ignition, feeling disappointed. "Dallas has good taste," I said. I pulled away from the center, feeling uneasy. A permanent full-time position was the goal that I had been working toward. But now that it wasn't offered to me, I wasn't shattered. In fact, the more I considered things, the more relief I felt. "You do know that Dean wanted to hire you, but he has some concerns." Livy turned on the radio and chose a top 40 station. "Like what?" I asked. "You're famous by association. He's waiting for that to die down before he offers you a full-time position." "You're lucky he gave you that much. Intake was inundated with so many calls that they needed to work overtime. Most of the callers requested you as their therapist." "Blocking the clients that need us," I grumbled. "I don't think you should take the position, T. You're meant for much more. You could use your platform to help others," Livy insisted. "I don't have a platform. Save it. You have 50,000 followers on Instagram. You can do something on Instagram." "Like what? Write inspirational quotes of the day?" I shot back. "You could always read and review relationship books. Maybe we could start a podcast about relationships and answer letters," Livy suggested. "Whose idea was this?" I demanded, suspicious of my friend. "You do know that Roger is leaving the horse farm to Dallas and Byron. Why not turn the place into a couple's retreat?" she suggested. "It's not my farm," I argued. "I can't make plans and—" "Neither Dallas nor Byron are interested in the farm. Trust me, Mayor, you will only get in the way of things if you stay at the community center. Renee isn't going to let up anytime soon." Her words hurt like hell, but Livy was only being honest. That was her number one virtue: tell the truth even if it's unpleasant. "I'll talk to Dallas about my options," I agreed. No way in hell was I starting a couples retreat. The podcast idea wasn't half bad, though. Now, thanks to Renee, I needed to go back to the metaphorical drawing board. "Good afternoon," a brunette wearing a blue knee-length casual dress greeted. The bridal shop was beginning to overwhelm me, and I hadn't even begun shopping yet. Grandma Mabel walked in moments later, followed by Cindy, of all people. Seeing her reminded me that Matt had given my location to Thomas. Maybe Livy invited her for a reason? Angela was the last to join the group, excitement lighting her eyes. "I take it these are my bridesmaids?" I softly asked Livy, gesturing at Cindy and Angela. "The only other friends you have, T," Livy reminded me. "Hi, Charlotte. This is my best friend, Tamara Freeman. Do you have the suite ready?" "I do, indeed," Charlotte replied. After I greeted Grandma, Angela, and Cindy, we headed back to the suite reserved for the bride and her guests. There was a sitting room with a couch, minibar, a pedestal, and a snack table. The changing room was twice the size as the ones you found in the mall, complete with a floor-length mirror. I stood in there and waited for Charlotte to hand me my first dress, which was nothing more than a white sheath with little creativity. Not the dress, but it was a good baseline. "That is not a Vegas dress," Cindy commented as I stood on the pedestal. It was the 7th dress in, and I was beginning to realize that Cindy was the best person to bring. She cataloged the dresses as Vegas and church. I agreed with her. This dress was a sweetheart-lined beauty with a lined skirt that elegantly drifted down the floors. There was beading sewn onto the dress's bodice. The moment I saw the dress, I imagined walking down the aisle to Dallas, a wide smile on my face. "Church wedding it is, because this is the dress," I declared. Grandma Mabel wiped a tear away from her eyes. Charlotte rapidly clapped her hands, her eyes shining. She quickly left the suite and entered holding a veil, which she promptly put on me. "Not right," Cindy said. "It's too plain for the dress. Tamara, do you trust me to pick out a veil for you?" "Sure." After finding the dress, I lost interest in the other details. I was glad that Charlotte allowed me to try on shoes with this dress. I thought the wedding shoes were good enough. "Why don't you sit? This might take a while," Charlotte suggested. After I was settled on the couch, everyone else cleared out to look at the veils and accessories. I trusted that they would choose well for me. My phone vibrated, so I pulled it out of the purse and read the text message. Unknown. "Meet me at Wallace Diner in 10 minutes. If you don't, Dallas will pay." Unknown. "If you call the police, Dallas gets it." No. How in the hell had I been so stupid? I thought I could have everything I ever wanted, but what we built was collapsing. Dallas. He didn't deserve to get caught up in something like this. I had to protect him, even if it was reckless. If Donovan wanted to finish what he started, I would be there. I stood, slipped my purse over my shoulder, and lifted my dress by the sides and hustled out of the suite. I walked past the women who were by the racks of veils and ignored the summons of the other employees. Instead, I exited the boutique, wincing as my train dragged on the pavement. I quickly bundled myself in the SUV and drove like Dallas's life depended on it. Chapter 33. Tamara. I took a deep breath as my high-heeled shoe began tapping against the linoleum. The air reeked of delicious, heart attack-inducing fried food mixed in with the slightest hint of cleaning solution. The restaurant was packed with people who were enjoying the cuisine, not concerned with the overdressed idiot sitting in the back. Well, overdressed was a bit of an understatement since I still wore the off-white beaded veil. Footsteps alerted me to the approach of a server, who walked over with pity in her blue eyes. The girl couldn't have been more than 16. Her red hair was up in a ponytail, her plump lips painted a bold red. She held her head up with confidence, something that I was desperate to steal. When I was her age, I couldn't sneeze without having a panic attack. It wasn't like I was much of an improvement at 24. Where in the hell did my orderly, predictable life vanish off to? "A runaway bride?" she asked. Her sympathetic words making sweat drip down my back. Please don't let this girl recognize me. Please let this horrible day stay off social media. Not by choice, I wanted to say. But I simply nodded and glared at the worn black purse that rested on the table beside me. It was fortunate that Charlotte lost the opportunity to weigh me down with unnecessary accessories. Our appointment with Pastor Graham was in 15 minutes. When I didn't walk through the church doors, Dallas would come looking for me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Ugh, nothing was worse than being called ma'am by a teenager. "I'm fine. Can you bring me a club soda?" I asked, my voice coming out scratchy. "No problem, ma'am. I'll be right with you." The server responded, momentary relief hitting me when she rushed off. It would be fine. Dallas would forgive me for standing him up. He would have acted with the same haste had he received the same text message that brought me to this diner. His life was worth more than hurt feelings. If my decision destroyed our relationship, then I couldn't think like that, not after everything we'd been through. Dallas wasn't simply a fiancé, a lover, a partner. He was my best friend and soulmate. He would know that I would never do a thing to deliberately humiliate him. He needed to be shielded from the toxicity that touched my life. I needed to be strong and keep my distance. The thought of never having the luxury of being wrapped in Dallas's loving arms caused a tear to trickle down my face. "Here you go, ma'am." Do you want any food? She inquired. Oh no, I could barely breathe, let alone eat. Gravy and biscuits will be fine, I automatically replied. Ordering Dallas's favorite gave me an unexpected jolt of warmth. Dallas. What was he doing right about now? Was he on his way to the church, dressed in something that would display his fine physique, excited to meet me at the altar? I couldn't fault him for the excitement. He would be thinking, we finally made it. Obstacles kept on popping up like a jack-in-a-box that Renee was cruelly twisting. She enjoyed breaking me down.
Tamara, we need to talk,
a familiar voice announced. I froze, icy fear nearly stopping my fragile heart. Just when I couldn't think that life could get any worse, the psycho that tried to murder me plopped down across from me as if we were friends meeting for dinner. I would have run, but where in the hell was I going to go? I was wearing a dress that weighed more than I did, which meant that outrunning him would be nearly impossible. I followed the trajectory of the monster's hand, nervous that he was going to unwrap the silverware and attack me with it. But all he did was stare me down, as if I were a stubborn child who was in the midst of unnecessary hysterics. His demeanor caused an unsettling thought to slip into my mind. I may not have much time left. He probably came here to finish the job he started 6 years ago. As I sat there in the greasy diner, wearing a beautiful wedding dress, I thought of Dallas and all the years I wasted resisting him. I would have soaked up his love and squeezed in as many kisses a girl can have in a short lifetime if I had known that I'd face my murderer so soon. But that's the one thing that someone can never plan for. How much time you have with the one you love. Is Dallas safe? I was supposed to meet him at the church 10 minutes from now. He would view my absence as a giant step back. Before Donovan could reply, Katie and Matt joined us. Neither of them looked comfortable. I frowned when Katie took the seat beside me while Matt chose to sit beside Donovan. Were Matt and Katie Donovan's followers?
Now, let's get started. Yes, Dallas is safe. I just had to make it look good so that you come alone. By the way, you look beautiful. WTF. What in the hell was going on? You're a piece of crap, Donovan, Matt snarled. You're a bigger piece of crap for taking Renee's payout to save your garage. Why not ask Dallas for money? He would have given it to you. I frowned, my eyes widening in surprise. Wait. You aren't here to kill me? I asked, starting to settle down a bit. Donovan pulled a flash drive from his jacket pocket and put it on the table in front of me. No, I don't want to kill you. I want to apologize to you. Renee manipulated me into going after you. One of my former cellmates is a hacker. All of the information is on that flash drive. Our emails, recorded phone conversations, and the photos. Renee told me that you allowed her to get abused by your mother. She asked me to scare you. We were lovers, you know. But when the police interviewed her, she told them that I was her stalker. He had to be lying. Donovan was delusional. He's telling the truth, Katie chimed in. I'm ashamed of it, but Renee paid me $2,000 to slip you a note from Donovan. Matt vandalized Dallas's house, Donovan added. I made eye contact with Matt, who didn't look ashamed. I saw how afraid you were after you found that note and figured that the vandalism would make you break off the engagement. Why? I said, trying to control my anger, After all, I was surrounded by enemies. Because I can't stand that while I had to struggle for everything I have, Dallas got everything he wanted. Matt leered at me, which made my stomach twist. Tamara, get the hell out of that booth. That angry demand came from my father. I stood, using the table for balance. Katie? I rasped out. She grabbed the flash drive and handed it to me. I dropped the information in my purse and she got out of the booth. I struggled with my dress, accidentally stepping on the material on my way out. As soon as I was free, Dad wrapped an arm around me. Let me get your train, Katie offered. I was too numb to answer. Matt, Dallas would have willingly given you the money. He loves you like a brother, I rasped out. Matt shook his head. He took the one thing that I ever wanted without thought. I don't want anything from him, Matt declared. What was that? I needed to know why one of Dallas's best friends could betray him the way he had. You. He knew how I felt about you and took you like he took everything else, Matt shouted. Ugh. I never would have dated Matt, even if Dallas hadn't made a move on me. I never would have been with you, even if Dallas didn't exist, I coolly said. My father put pressure on my shoulder and I moved forward, allowing him to usher me out of the restaurant. A concerned-looking Dallas stood by my car, a frown on his face. Mayor, if you weren't ready to marry me, you could have let me know, Dallas said. He was alive, well and unharmed. I pulled away from my father and wrapped my arms around him. I do want to marry you. I got a text telling me that if I didn't come here, something bad would happen to you, but it was only a trick to get me here. You're safe, I cried out. Dallas rubbed my back, his mouth kissing the top of my head. I hope you like this dress. I bought it for you. The attendant was pissed off when you ran out with it. I have to apologize to her, I sniffled. You're alive. I was so scared. Next time you get a threatening message, call the police, sweetheart. Will you take me back to the shop? We're late for our appointment with Pastor Graham, I said. Let me drive your car, Tamara. My dad insisted. I nodded, and he dug my keys out of my purse and headed to the SUV that Dallas bought for me. Dallas helped me into his car, and we both said goodbye to Katie. As soon as Dallas and I were alone, I spilled everything. That bastard vandalized my house because Renee paid him to do it? Dallas asked, stunned by the news. He's jealous of you, Dee. I'm so sorry. Everything Renee touches turns to crap. He shook his head. No, you aren't going to tell me to stay away from you. I love you, Tamara. We have information. If it's useful, we'll go to the police. Police? I asked, concern filling my gut. Your sister tried to have you killed to suit her own needs. That can't go unpunished, Dallas hissed. I never thought that Renee would go that far, I rasped out, shocked by the realization that Donovan was probably telling the truth. After you change back into your clothes, we'll turn the information over to the Weston police. They were the ones that handled the case. The detective will be happy to see me again, I grumbled. T, what the hell is wrong with you? Livy shouted after Dallas helped me walk into the bridal suite. Dallas is perfect for you. It was a threat on my life that had Mare running out of here, Dallas explained. Charlotte looked horrified. Sorry, I got a text saying that if I didn't meet someone at the Wallace Diner, something bad would happen to Dallas. It turned out to be a trick, thank God. I'd just like to change and head to the police station. I told you so, Cindy replied. Tamara is crazy about Dallas. Matt complains about that all the time.
Did you know that Matt vandalized my house? Dallas asked Cindy, whose eyes widened with surprise.
What? Why?
The influencer demanded. While Charlotte helps me change, Dallas, can you fill in? I said. Charlotte nodded and followed me into the changing room. After helping me out of my dress, she shot me a hard look. Next time you get a text like that, call the police. You're lucky things turned out for the better this time, she said. I nodded, and she left me to change into my work clothes and shoes. When I exited, Grandma was the first to wrap her arms around me. I hugged every one of my friends and family, relieved that I had their support. Chapter 34. Tamara. 6 weeks later. Charlie bumped my hand as I was attempting to type on my laptop. I giggled and petted him. That cat was hungry for affection. I was at Dallas's kitchen table, trying to hammer out the first draft of my book. In the end, I hadn't accepted the position at the Wallace Community Center. The news that Renee planned my attack hit the news circuit like the plague. Instead, I hunkered down at Dallas's house, deciding that I could share my story of love and betrayal. Maybe I would help a discarded daughter out there, constantly living in the shadow of a successful sibling. From what I understood, the prosecutor was eager to go to trial, but she was open to a plea deal if Renee apologized to both me and the police department for lying to them. Mom was shocked and horrified by Renee's stunt. Well, that's what she said to any reporter that would interview her. She hadn't reached out to me, and I didn't think I'd welcome the contact. She created a monster who turned on me when her star began to fade. The front door opened and my heart rate increased. Dallas spent the day running errands. "Hey, sweetheart," he greeted before shooing Charlie off his table. "Hey," I replied. Figuring that my writing was done for the day, I shut down the computer and got to my feet. "We're still going out to dinner?" "Yes," Dallas replied, a smile on his face. I kissed his cheek, excited at the prospect of a date. We'd settled for a winter wedding date since I hated the thought of wearing a heavy dress in the middle of summer. We decided to have Pastor Graham marry us, since we occasionally attended his church. I kept the same bridesmaids, even Cindy. Now that she let her guard down, she wasn't a terrible person. Livy and Cindy got on well, Livy happily allowing the influencer to move into her apartment. Angela, Livy, Cindy, and I had monthly girls' nights filled with wine and laughter. "You still won't tell me where we're going?" "Just wear the dress I picked out and you'll be fine." No matter what Dallas said, I knew he didn't pick out the light blue maxi-style dress that was in his closet. Livy or Cindy probably did most of the work. "Okay, give me an hour and we'll leave." "This place again?" I squeaked out as Dallas drove down the street that held Hyacinth, the restaurant where I was treated to a wine shower. Ugh, that place didn't hold good memories. "Trust me," Dallas pleaded. We exited the car and he handed the suit-clad valet his keys. He escorted me to the entrance, but before we could enter, Livy ran out of the restaurant, a graduation gown slung over a shoulder and a cap in her grip. Dallas took the gown from Livy and helped me into it. I arranged the cap over my hair and eyed my friend. She grinned and opened the doors to the restaurant. As soon as I stepped foot inside, pomp and circumstance blasted through speakers. My eyes widened when I entered the dining room and was nearly blinded by camera flashes. Except, these weren't the flashes of crazy paparazzi, but the friends and family I collected over the years. Classmates, co-workers, church friends, and my family all filled the room. Even Dallas's family were in attendance. I saw Vivian, Fred, and Jeannie, and a few cousins I'd met in passing. I was ushered to the table of honor set in the center of the room. As soon as the music cut off, Professor Gomez walked to the front of the restaurant holding a cordless mic. Tamara, this celebration is for you. You didn't participate in the commencement ceremony because you feared that you would affect the experience of your classmates. That in itself speaks to the kind of person you are. You're always willing to help others. I'm told that your kindness knows no bounds. So true, Livy shouted from somewhere behind me. Because you didn't get the chance to walk across the stage for your graduation, your family and friends decided to honor you with this celebration. Now come up here and receive your diploma. I walked up to the stage, feeling loved and supported. Professor Gomez handed me the diploma, and everyone clapped. Dallas rented out the place just for me. I knew it since he was the only one with means and the heart to do it. His frequent errands now made a lot of sense. I smiled as a photographer took pictures of me holding my diploma. I blinked away the happy tears, not wanting to ruin the pictures. I shook Professor Gomez's hand again and mouthed a thank you in his direction. Then I walked over to the table of honor, which held my father, his fiancée, Grandma Mabel, and Dallas. I ran into Dallas's arms and kissed him, feeling grateful that I took a chance on him. Yes, our engagement was unexpected. But Dallas was right to pop the question the way he had. Anything less and I wouldn't have been forced to challenge my security to give him a chance. Change and I still didn't have the best relationship. But I was beginning to see that change was necessary in order to find true happiness. The end. This has been Unexpected Engagement, Unexpected Love Book Number 1, written by Debbie Civil, narrated by Millie Ann Shipe and Oliver Johnson. Copyright 2021 by Debbie Civil. Production copyright by Debbie Civil. Engineered by Kimberly Davis.